MK Ultra and how it evolved, and what the frequency technology does nowadays with low frequency resonation plus manipulation, and some of the things that they have hidden from the public that are actually real. And you, one night on one of our spaces, talked about the voice to skull technology is real, and you were telling me about it, and I thought, when they asked the question, I was like, oh my god, Brian has to speak on this. So that's
Oh
why.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very real. It was used on me, and after it was used on me, obviously to showcase the reality of it, I was at one of these kind of defense technology summits, and somebody singled me out of the crowd and was doing the voice to my skull, and I was looking around at the people standing right next to me. I'm like, you don't hear that? And I was like kind of laughing, and the gentleman that was doing that to me approached me and asked me. He told me about the technology, and of course I've heard of that stuff before, but I had never actually used it or seen it live in first person. And he had asked me if I wanted to try it out, and I did. I mean, it was just pretty much aligning somebody within a viewfinder, kind of like the old camcorder, and you put the person in the silhouette, and you have to lock on them. And once you've locked on them, it like turns green. And then when you speak into the microphone, they're the only ones hearing you talk from across the room. So yeah, it's very real. I've actually used it before. It's pretty sophisticated. They've actually even brought it into the consumer side of things. It was actually at the Consumer Electronics Show, I think, back in 2014. I know Audi and I think Sprint mobile phones was looking into it, because obviously, if you can imagine a car with television screens in the headrest, and you don't need to wear earphones, you can individually listen to your own shows, or if you can imagine not having to wear headsets with a smartphone, that seemed to be their angle. But yeah, it's very real, and it's very effective. It's kind of creepy when the person next to you cannot hear what's very obvious, what they're saying to you, and and it's very good sound quality too. One at the Consumer Electronics Show, they were doing the Monaco race, the street race, right, with the Formula One cars, and it was like crystal clear, and it was really amazing. But you had to stand in front of the TV, but it was the same concept. You stand in front of the TV, stand in the silhouette, went green, and then you would hear the Monaco, the F1 Formula cars racing through the streets of Monaco, and I mean high def, and nobody else was standing literally right next to you could hear it. So yeah, just pretty trippy stuff out there.
Yeah, I actually talked to Cappy just a couple, 5, 10 minutes after he had it done to him, and the girl that was beside him in the car, she was just completely beside herself, you know, in a panic. Um, and I was like, "Well, you mean they could talk? They could talk to you?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, they talked to me right into my head, and they could read my thoughts." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Because I was thinking of where I should go." And they're like, "No, don't go there. No, don't go there. No, don't go there." And then they just started playing. Look, here's the song they played. The Phil Collins song. I can hear it coming in the air of the night. That's what they, stuck in his head. And then the next day, VK plays that song, posts that song. And so there's a lot of people here on X that probably know what the hell happened, because they're all playing, weird mind games with everybody. But
Yeah,
that
I think
shit's
I heard
very
that.
real.
Okay.
If I can say, I heard the Kent gentleman speak, and I would second what he was saying. It's more than just zapping somebody with a frequency to manipulate. I think there's a lot of key trigger mechanisms that they identify. Because if you've seen Into the Light, which is the sequel to Out of Shadows, Mike, I don't know if you're planning on doing a play of that, but we go into that into some detail. How they're able to I mean, MK Ultra was the it's like the original plan, right? But it's since evolved. They've just inputted into these artificial intelligence algorithms. I mean, they technically took what they learned in MK Ultra and they use it as an input method. So now they get an output because they've taken your willingness to program your digital twin in the metaverse, and when I say metaverse, I don't mean like Zuckerberg's as much as I mean your person exists as a digital person, but they've got you. They've got your your psychographics figured out, and they can crack you relatively easy. And we talk about that into the light, but I agree with what Kent was saying. And these are the mechanisms of which they know to break you down if they want to, have you go attempt to assassinate a president or whatever it is. That it's a lot further than where it was back in the 60s for sure.
Well, then too, Brian, you think about like who controls the trigger, right? If it's AI and it's in cyberspace and the AI is, pulling the quote unquote trigger, it's like you have no ability. Like that's how crazy all this is. The genie's out of the bottle, right? So
Yeah.
that's where.
Well, I call that sixth generation warfare. I always laugh at General Flynn because him and Boone wrote the fifth generation. And I said, well, we're in the sixth generation of warfare where people are automating psychological operations with very, very, pristine conditions. And then we're going to eventually get into that, right? That seventh generation warfare where you're removing humans altogether. This is where they're talking about the first strike against mankind by AI is going to be manipulation. It's going to be deception and turning us against each other. I mean, because it works now, why wouldn't it work? We do that now to each other, and it's very effective now. So why wouldn't the artificial intelligence capitalize on, on that? So yeah, Mike knows, I don't know how much we didn't really identify that specifically in the movie, but we did talk about that whole concept of sixth generation, seventh generation warfare. But it's very, very scary stuff.
And it's real,
Guys, so just really quickly, I wanted to give a warm welcome to everybody else that's come into the space. A lot of people have poured in here since we had the watch party. And, I'm going to kick off with an intention because what we are going to be talking about is very heavy. When I say heavy, it's like, there's times where even I've felt like, oh my God, is this too big for me to be able to change? Is that it? Are we doomed? And so I just want you to know that the intention is to bring about an awareness to empower you, right? There is something that happens when a collective comes together and the awareness happens that can be extremely powerful. Keep that on your heart as we continue to talk about this, because even some of the self-limiting beliefs that you have could very well have been programmed into you by something like this. And so I believe that, what we're doing here is not like dooming the world into submission or surrender. It's more for you to tap into your intuition. If you have things that come onto your, as questions arise in your mind, make sure you're speaking them out. But we're here on a very high vibration talking about some heavy ass shit. So with that being said, I'm just gonna hit my, y'all already know I always hit my bowls. But what I want also to talk about, because this is very layered, like we have kind of different aspects of it, but one of the main aspects that I keep hearing being brought up is warfare. Now, there's the traditional, I guess, idea that we have of what warfare is and being able to, it's interesting that we call them all defense, but I think in our case, we're seeing that this is turning the people as like, are we the enemy force? Like how there's no line differentiating what it is that the advancements in our technological warfare, like obviously in psyops they're allowed to use that on friendly forces, but this is very, this is just, I can't help but to keep wondering about this. I wanted to kind of put that to the center. And Alpha, I do see your hand up, which is perfect, because kicking it over to you, um, is that distinction not of concern or ever brought up? I mean, is that something that is handled legally? Like, when is it okay to begin to like turn the warfare technology against the people?
Well, to answer that question real quick, it's never okay to turn warfare against the people. It's never okay to do anything against any humanity without humanity's consent. And when you're manipulating people's thought process or influencing people's subconscious, in order to leverage that consent, then it's really not consent. And I think that's where this gets really dark and really confusing is, well, what is legitimate and what's not. And I mean, we're really lucky to have the people on stage tonight to ask these questions to. So with that, I have a question for you, Brian. If you have the answer, if not, if you can get back to me on this, I'm very curious with this, digital footprint that they have to us. And one of the things that I've always told my audience, Brian, is think about the amount of time we spent on social media, whether it was the inception of MySpace or all these other programs, where it's it's not just about what you're reading and what you're writing, but we have all this, biometric data and these camera lenses on our phones that, I mean, we're scrolling, so it knows, I would guess that the analytics even knows the speed of my scroll, what made me slow scroll, that what caught my attention to just read something versus not only what also caught my attention to not just read it, but respond, what generated an emotional response. Like I just imagine that the amount of very specific data that it's recording on us 24/7, even our facial grimaces, our blinking, our eye dilations, like all this like data on us, like our physical response, our mental response, with all that data available to them, if it is available to them. That's the first question. The second question is, if it is available to them, kind of the way I'm describing, does that provide them then the data they need to create algorithms to get very specific on if the government was to do this, or if the government was to do this, these specific people would respond to that. These specific people would either be grassroots organizers or maybe civil disobedience or whatever the case may be, and we can target these people with things before we deploy our stuff, so our enemy doesn't even exist by the time we unravel an operation we want to put into play.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was a study done with just simply using likes and dislikes. Again, not like what you were posting or what your comments were, but the study. I have to go back and look. I don't know if it was a Harvard study, but it was saying after so many likes, like after 150 likes, the people monitoring that know more about you than your own spouse. So
So when Brian was telling me about this when we were doing the second movie, he's going to tell you about the clones and how you've had a digital ID your
And
whole entire life, and everything you've liked and disliked and loved or did, they build clones with you in the metaverse. And Brian, tell him about that, because what
yeah,
he's
yeah,
asking you is exactly what you were explaining to me. So they run payloads on groups of people or sectors of people based on algorithms and how
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
react to things. So Brian, jump into that and then we can keep
Well,
going.
you all remember like back like World War One, World War Two, when they would want the local village to overthrow, leadership, they would just pepper everybody with leaflets. They would drop the leaflets. It's kind of the same concept, but see, that was a very hit or miss kind of tactic. Now they have with a 99% certainty rate that they can boot up the whole village in the metaverse and run hundreds of thousands of messages against the whole village's psychograph, their digital twin, until they get enough of a hit that they will overthrow that local government. And then they'll boot the village down. They'll create that package and put that into the physical domain. So you've got the information domain and you get the physical domain. But yeah, and this is stuff done, within milliseconds. We're not talking months of any of that. They could literally boot you up in the metaverse. And that's what we're talking about, the likes, dislikes. Every one of us have a digital twin in the metaverse. And absolutely, this was used against us. And it started, people talk like, yeah, you think about buying a specific car. You just think it. It used to be cookies, right? You go browse a website or two and started building out that profile. Then they brought in that pixel technology. But now it's like you even think about it and they know that that's why you're seeing these advertisings on your thoughts. So that's called predictive analytics, predictive messaging.
And it's literally a looking glass.
Yeah. I mean, they know so much about us because we willingly, well, I mean, against our knowledge, but we've signed our life away, as Mike said in the movie. You know, he did a great job telling about how we all signed it away. But yeah, you've got systems out there. The United States Army's Artificial Intelligence Center has a platform called Entropy. And now, mind you, when you look up these systems and what their capabilities are, they'll always say, well, we use this against our enemies. Well, guess what? The last I checked, the Patriot Act's still hanging around. So, you're the enemies sometimes to these people. So it's not a big deal. But that's technically what the Entropy platform is built on, is the building out of the psychographics and the targeting of people's minds. And yeah, so it's real.
The craziest thing, Brian, is during the Arab Spring under Obama, the CIA, along with Google, had a actual, and you guys can go, I'll post it up in the nest, but basically a Google defection tracker, right, for the overthrowing of all of the Arab Spring countries, specifically mapping out social circles, tracking defections, building the defection weapon, and then actually in the WikiLeaks files too, it verifies and validates this. So when you stop and think about that, that's like, if we're, one of these foreign countries, Sudan or Libya, they're literally tracking each individual and each family and how they can manipulate and twist and contort that family member to defect, right, and to go against the regime. So it's like absolutely happened from 2000 to 2014.
And then there's a commercialization aspect of it, because that's typically what you see, pretty much what I was talking about, that voice to skull technology. There's a commercialization of that, your digital twin, and I won't spoil it if you haven't seen Into the Light, but Mike and I took people down a very dark, sinister path that this commercialized version of your digital self is on, and it's very real. And it was funny because Mike, had asked me to come up to the studio, and I recorded, and I kind of looked over the guy holding the mic and the guy, doing behind the cameras and the people there. And you start talking and they look at you like you're freaking crazy. And then I come back home, and Mike's great. He calls me. He's like, "You just officially scared the shit out of everybody at the studio." And I was like, "Why? What happened?" And he's like, "Well, we looked into what you said and we found this." And I said, "Oh yeah, it's real." And I went back up and we talked about it a little bit more. But if you haven't seen Into the Light, it's and he's just scratching the surface. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on, even in the space of spirituality. You got AI churches, chat GPT driven sermons in Austin, Texas, and that's spreading. But it's really dark stuff, but it needs to be talked about, because we are unfortunately going to see within the next 6 to 10 years a monumental shift of humanity from this kind of technology. And unfortunately, I've never seen a industrial revolution be stopped because it was uncomfortable. There's profits to be made. There's wars to be fought. Therefore, these things will continue. So all we can do is to pay attention, watch these movies, understand what the signs are. I mean, we need to be prepared for this stuff. So, but thanks for that.
Okay, so it's interesting that you brought up spirituality. First and foremost, I also wanted to give a shout out to Augustus, because Augustus was the very first person I ever heard bring up MK Ultra and the voice of God, the voice to skull technology with Dr. Duncan. He's known about this for a very long time. He'd read this book, and this was in a different platform. And so I am going to pass it to you in a second. But when you just brought up the spirituality piece, this is a new thing that we're hearing. A lot of people like, I just got to download. I just got to download. Like, I am aware that there's definitely real ones. And I think that, there's ones that where we just have this intuitive nature. Our right hemisphere can access, let's just say, expanded consciousness and pull in, like maybe, I guess, I don't know, information from your higher self of sorts, or God, or people pray. Like, but think about how that can be manipulated. And I'm sorry, this is just like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks right now. But like, there was some chick that was making heinous and crazy accusations about me and my crew, saying that it was via download and 50 other people got the download at the same time. Like, what the fuck you talking about? And I mean, not to say that I think that that was that they were using. I think she was just hallucinating and a liar. But overall, though, I think that that is something to be, concerned about. We're gonna have to, we're going to break that down. The digital twin thing, I have lots of information on that. That's kind of a part of the research that I was doing with the Great Reset and kind of the future of, this digital panopticon, if you will, and the smart cities and how it's all networked together. It's like, it's crazy how all of these are intersecting right now. But Augustus, I'm going to give it over to you, love. Go ahead and jump in. Welcome. So glad you came.
Yo, what's up, Maze? What's up, everybody? Yeah, man. V2K is one of many non-touch torture technologies that I'm aware of. And MK Ultra is just one of many MK programs, mind control programs. One of its successors was MK Naomi, which dove into how do we use substances like opiates, substances like benzos, substances like sodium, something that's in everything, to create the same effect we see in the ultra programming. So the devices and mechanisms that act as a foundation for human hacking and human mind hacking are there in your food. It's in your water. It's in the air. It's all around us. It's the ones and zeros that create the matrix, in my opinion. But I've got a book, Project Soul Catcher. I'm not sure if you went over any of that material with your group yet, Maze, but there's one common theme that intersects the MK programs, the non-touch torture, mind hacking technologies, and uh, science and faith or spiritualism. It's weird that basically they all intercross at this same conjunction of basically a combination, like a merger of technology and spirituality. And even in the more sophisticated, non-touch torture devices and technologies, do they mimic things within a spiritual sense, like mimicking it as basically taking computer language and taking spiritual language and merging them uh, in a negative way. So, like another word or another term for what is a mind control program is a daemon or a demon. Basically, they're saying these demons can kind of possess you, hijack your mind. If you go into looking at the other technologies as well, not only are they using words like demon and angels and angel script,
Damon is definitely one of it. That's interesting.
right? And using these like sorts of back and forths, but they'll just blatantly say, we've got a program called Christ, the Common Human Routines Interferer Software Technology. Or we've got a program called Satan, the Silent Assassination Through Adapting Networks program. So, designing these programs revolved around the idea of demigods and um, implementing them into NSA, CIA, DoD systems is nothing that's, new. It's been going on for quite some time. And it's ultimately a fight versus good versus evil. It's ultimately a fight of good versus evil. And that's the point I was trying to make.
Thank you, Augustus. I do remember you bringing up the whole soul catcher thing. I wasn't ready for it at that time because you were the one that kind of black pilled me in a lot of shit, and not red pill, but
My
the
bad.
darker
Yeah,
side,
my
like
bad
black.
about that. But
Like you had me watch this one documentary of a super soldier that blew my mind. Like I that just kind of like you can put dynamite inside of somebody's brain and it just busted open, and I had to pull the pieces back together, and but it was the exact thing and timing that was needed for me to kind of get catalyzed into pursuing the rest of what I where I am now. So I appreciate
look at
that.
all these minds.
But the whole soul culture thing,
Look at all these
huh?
minds you're freeing every day. You come on this thing all the time, and you're freeing people's minds. Left, right, back in the middle, to the top, on the bottom, freeing the mind. It's a beautiful thing.
I appreciate you, Augustus. So what you brought up when you were just talking about the whole spiritual, like, good versus evil. There is this one thing I want to tell you guys about this, and Augusta, since you're here specifically, I want to bring it up. I had like this very weird experience, and it triggered me to open a room, which completely changed my perception of what I like the level of danger I would say that this thing has. Because within like I would say maybe 2 days, like a 48-hour span, I began noticing patterns of people and this expression of depression and it being a wave, and then the suicidal thoughts. Like I had somebody call me like in the middle of the night saying, I need help, I need somebody to take care of my son, because she wanted to go kill herself. She was like literally on the cliff, and I stayed on the phone with her all night. Then the next day, somebody came into one of my rooms and had mentioned suicide. And then I had a text from a friend of mine saying that they're experiencing massive wave of depression. And I was like, hold up, this can't be a coincidence that this many people within such a short period of time, are saying the same things. And like literally, I paid attention to what they were saying, and it was like the specific thoughts that they were having. And so I was like, what the hell could that be? And so I started looking up some stuff to see how there could be messages and waves and whatever. I came across the lily wave, right? You remember that, Augustus? I had a space that next day, and when the room was packed, I mean, it was hundreds of people that were saying that somebody they know is expressing the same exact thing within the past like week. And this was a huge eye opener for me. And Lily Waves is so John Lilly came up with it, and there was reasons why he came up with it, but then it was obviously weaponized into the everyday household. Okay. And so I noticed that certain people that were already kind of struggling with depression were pushed to the cliff, like to the edge. And then there's people like me, I was experiencing a lot of brain fog, just lack of clarity, kind of moving around trying to, I'd keep forgetting what the hell I went here for. And like, it was really difficult to navigate. It was, even though it sounds like it's less severe, it was heavy. It was very heavy to where I could not make like good decisions. You know what I mean? It was just a strange phenomena. And so, with that being said, I think that it's time for us to discuss this all the time on a serious note, because we're funding this, guys. That's what I'm going to keep bringing to the table. We are funding the research and the application of these weapons against the people in what they describe as warfare. Crazy. Okay, go ahead, Turtle. Then we'll go to Kent and Mr. Watson and Kent.
Man, I'm sure glad that I waited before you told that story, until after you told that story. All right, well, so if you already know about the Lily Wave, then you already know about Gwen Towers. And the Gwen Towers can send low frequency waves. And back when I was in the audio business, I was involved in med beds. I can't really talk about that part. But I designed the enclosures for super low frequency. Okay, so
But a
they
lot of
can
people
send.
don't know what that is. You want to explain
Yeah.
a
Okay.
nutshell version? Yeah.
Well, it's just like a 4 hertz frequency, 4 to 5. They can literally turn a dial and make you feel sick, and they can turn a dial a little bit further and make you feel depressed. And they can even do it through the electrical outlet in your freaking appliances in your house to make it hum at at frequencies that'll disturb you. And the Glen towers and the low frequency towers are different from the 5G towers. Remember when they were touting their own horn saying, we sent a scalar wave around the world. Wow, we're so good. Well, they can shut us down and make our muscles fail at like 5.6 hertz. You know what I mean? It's just turning the dial and you lose all bowel control. I mean, you just shut down. You're a piece of meat on the floor if they put this, and that's what all of these 5G towers are. They're weapons. But we can, for a solution, they do make EMF paint now that you can paint your house. That's why they took lead paint away, because lead would block the EMF frequencies and the radio frequencies from getting us when we were inside of our homes. And they even make shungite powder that you can put in your normal latex paint, and the shungite powder will have the same effect. And what Brian touched on is our biofield. We can be targeted individually and poisoned through radiation poison. Yes, as much as they want. And there's nobody sitting there pushing the button on it. You're just fed into, your number gets called and you get put in there. And I guess they have like punishments. Maybe that's the 7 stages of hell, is how far that they put you into punishment mode when they're targeting you. But they can absolutely target you. And Mike, I'm sure glad you covered Mind War. I posted it the other night. It's weird that it
Okay,
comes
Turtle,
full light tonight.
before you move on,
All right, I'll
just
stop.
because no, I want you to go. I just need the information in some sort of format that I can use and look at and propagate and continue to raise awareness around it, because I was not aware of that. I would like to know more about it. You know me. So if you can send me that shit,
Oh yeah.
please.
Well,
Yeah,
I got my
please.
notes all written in front of me, so that'll help me
Hey,
to give you links or something.
thank you, Turtle.
But I wanted to keep
Like,
going. Or no, just for a second, the Mind War
yeah,
thing. I've been telling everybody, because that is the blueprint for everything. And Aquino was in 2 of Cappy's chats one time. He didn't know that we knew he was in there, but we knew he was in there because we put a ghost in there to find out. Everybody came into the fucking room. So
Real
we
quick.
knew he was
hey,
in there.
well, thank you for understanding what I was trying to like. I actually just wanted people to look into that. I don't have a lot of time. I have a little while. So if
Yeah,
you guys want to
I
ask
was
me
gonna ask you a quick
questions
question,
about
Mike.
the movie or anything like that, um, all the stuff that you guys were talking about is super important. It's very important. It's way much more advanced than the film actually is. Um, but if you guys want to ask me any questions, or I'm here. So
I got one for you real quick.
go ahead.
So when you started to dig in and do the FOIAs, and you were really, really injured and hurt, and you felt like everything was breaking down, did you feel like the more you started to press into it, that not only was it obviously validating what you were seeing at the time, but did you feel under attack even more? Like how did that transpire as you started to try to lift the veil, so to speak, on the fact that this was all legit and real and happening?
That's a really great question. It was a process. Because I don't think revelation or enlightenment comes like some people. It just comes bam, it hits them. But what my process was, when I started realizing the things I was looking into, and then I would try to process like what I'd heard or what I knew or what I saw or what I believed. That was the really when I started waking up. And once I started kind of connecting the dots for myself, um, and it was a hard period in my life. I'm not gonna lie, it was really frustrating. But then when you in your gut know something's true, or you believe in something and you believe it more than anything else, you have a choice to make. What do I do? Do I not say anything, or do I stand up and do something? And I made Out of Shadows. I mean, I made the movie. I financed it myself. I gave it away for free, and I did everything I could do to get the message out. And God blessed it, and it went really viral, and it was a blessing. And so I felt like I was doing the right thing. And now look at it. I mean, that was 4 years ago. And if you watch, I mean, it still has legs today. I mean, like, you guys just all watched it. So if you guys have any questions about any of the, topic, I mean, of course, we can talk about MK Ultra and go way deep into how it advanced. But if you have any questions about any of the other stuff about the film, I'll answer anything you
I,
want to ask me.
I got one for you real quick, Mike. How hard did they make it for you to complete this film? Like, did you find issues with the banks, with the sets, equipment, staffing? Like, did you
No,
find a lot of resistance or no?
I did all that myself, so that was no problem. Where what was hard was I knew as soon as I released the film, that was the end of my career. I mean, I knew, coming to, I mean, like, how many people, I mean, like, I would ask you if you were saying to me, hey, I'm going to go to Hollywood and be a stuntman. I'm just going to go to Hollywood and be a stuntman. See how hard that is. And then see how hard it is to become a fight coordinator, and then a stunt coordinator, and then a second unit director or an action director, and then a writer, and then join the academy. See how hard all those things are, and then understand when you stand up and you make a film like Out of Shadows, what is it like to walk knowing that you're putting, as soon as you put this film out, you're done. And by the way, 3 days after I put the film out, I was with UTA for what, 9 years. As soon as I put the film out, I was taken off their website. They didn't call me.
That's so impactful, Mike. Because the next thing I wanted to ask you real quick too is like, so when you put the movie out, like, were there a lot of people in the industry that, like, on the, you don't have to name anybody, but that, like, on the low were like, dude, like, you just did the
Oh, I
thing.
got calls. Oh, yes. I mean, I got calls from people like, oh, oh my God, in stealth mode, did you just make the best documentary in history? I mean, I had people, and then I had people calling me going, they're going to kill you. They're going to kill you for sure. And I'm like, well, fuck it, bring it. Because I don't have any, like, I'm gonna die either way. I'm gonna die one day. And being a stunt guy, I was never really, I mean, I don't want to die, but I'm not really that scared of dying. I probably thought about dying more than most people in their entire lives, because every day when I went to work, somebody's safety was in my hands, whether it was my safety, the actor's safety, or somebody on the set, or another crew member's safety. That was my job. I had to keep people safe. So, I mean, I understood what I was doing when I did it, but I didn't look at it the same way that most people look at it. I looked at it like, I, if I don't do this, I don't see anybody else doing it. And, at the end of the day, I had money, I had fame, I had all the things that I had dreamed of getting. I mean, I won World Sun Awards. I did everything I set out to be, or accomplish. And to get to the next level, I wasn't willing to do what I had to do it, in my opinion. So I was like, yeah, screw this. I'm not
Were
doing
there
it.
any, like, silver lining people that, like, shocked or surprised you? Like, because the second you get dropped, right, it's like groupthink. It's like nobody is going to cross that boundary and share this.
Oh,
Was
there were a lot of, I mean, I'm not going to name, just like I won't name the bad guys, I'm not going to name the good guys yet, because there were a lot of good guys that reached out to me and were like, I can't believe you did that. I wish I had done it, but I just, I got a family, I got kids, I got, and I'm like, yeah, I understand. I get it. But you know what? I mean, not everybody has the same amount of conviction and sacrifice or willing to take it. And, that was just kind of where I was at. I was like, I, I've been blessed, and I was paralyzed. So once you get paralyzed and once you kind of come back from that, just the ability to walk again and to be strong again, all the other stuff kind of lost its, you know, I was all about other things for most of my life. But after that, I was just like, what really matters? And what really matters are the people around you that you love, and the people that you care about, and the ideal that you want to live in. And I believe in the republic. I believe in individual freedom and liberty and sovereignty and the right to have all of the things that the founding fathers set up for us with the Constitution. And when I saw these things being robbed or taken away, I was like, there is a group of people that are really working against us. And you can label them whatever you want to label them. You could call them Satanists. Well, you go, well, I don't believe in that. Well, that's fine. You don't have to believe in it. But if there's enough people that believe in a system, call it Satanism, call it communism, call it leftist Marxism, whatever you want to call it. If enough people believe in that system and they're acting on it together and it's affecting your reality, whether you like it or not, it's real. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe that what they believe is true. But if they're affecting your reality, it's real. So I just said, look, I see what you guys are doing. I've worked in this industry for a long time, but now I'm standing up and I'm saying I don't believe in this and I'm not going along with it. And I'm going to try to get people to wake up to the fact that we've been lied to, we've been manipulated, and to be frank, every one of us on this space and our parents and probably our grandparents have been under this illusion. And we're just now waking up to the fact that we've been lied to. So the answer where we walk forward is, how do we do that? And that's the Great Awakening. That's where we are at right now. And, it's not written. And we are the people that have been chosen for this time and this place to participate. So I'm I'm all in. I'm all in, and I want to see each and every one of us have liberty and freedom, and I want to see us reunite this country. And we're not that far apart. We don't. We're not divided like they want to make us believe we are, because we really aren't. Everybody wants a better life, but we've been manipulated into this technic technocracy. What's the right word?
Technocracy.
Technocracy.
Technocracy. Sorry, I'm not. Yeah,
Technocratic.
world that they want to move us into and remove us from the world God created and put us into the world that man created, and lie to us and tell us it's a better world. And it's not, because we have everything we need right here. So
Absolutely. How much time do you have, real quick? I just want to know so I can level
I'll
set.
I can hang out for about an hour, and then I gotta go to bed because I'm leaving for an event and I've got a bunch of stuff on the schedule. So yeah, I'll
Okay,
be around for an hour. So just
cool.
if you
I have
want
a
to,
two-part question for you.
yeah.
First of all, I think just in what it is that you were intending for people who watch your documentary, what they would get out of it, and then the second part of that is kind of like, where do you think, if if there is a remedy, or let's just say resistance or support of something, where could that energy be focused of the collective, at the same time, like focusing the resistance and or the support of something, where would you, based on what you know and all that you know now, what do you think that they could collaborate on?
Well, several things. Give me your first question and I'll answer that, and then I'll do the second part. Give me the first question.
Like, what is it that you wanted people to walk away with the
What I wanted
most?
them to
Like, what?
walk away with from that film was, have you ever considered that you've been programmed your whole life? Have you ever considered that we only know what we know? We only know what we've been taught. So if you only know what you know, how do you know what's real? Because if you've been manipulated, and I know, Mike talks about this a lot, about, like, we are basically debt slaves. I don't give a shit if you're black, blue, green, gay, straight, Christian, Muslim. We all are debt slaves. We work for the banks. We work for the financial institutions, the Black Rocks, the Arabellas, the State Street, the Vanguards. I mean, they control, those holding companies pretty much control everything that goes on in the world. And those people that control those companies are the people that control and dictate the finance of the world, or the currency of the world. So think of it like a giant mafia, and there's people that rule the mafia, and there's different levels of it. So I guess what I was trying to get people to do is look back and just consider that the world that we grew up in and believed in and want to believe in has been pretty much presented to us through our stories, through our films, through our history books, through everything that we know. And if we don't have access to the truth, we don't know what's the truth. And that's it. So that's what I was trying to ask people to consider. I'm not trying to tell people what to think, because, I mean, everybody's going to have a different arrival at what they believe the truth is. And that's okay. And we don't have to agree on everything. But I can guarantee you this: we all agree that our children should be safe. We all agree that we should love one another. We should take care of each other. We should honor each other, and we should all be able to have a right to make a living and protect our families and our sovereign nations. And that's really what I think humanity is all about. What the globalists have in mind is they want to rule everybody and control everybody, and they want to dictate to everybody what are the rules. And that's the battle we're in. I hope that answered your first question.
Yes, it did.
And what was the second
It
question?
does. The second one was like, in terms of everything that you know now, even after doing your second documentary, how can people unite for the resistance? Where can they focus their energy and collaborate on resisting, or any,
Well, can I tell you something cool about what
yeah,
you just said? The fact that we're
yeah.
having this space, the fact that we're having this discussion tells me we are winning. Because if it was up to what they had in mind for us, we wouldn't be having this conversation tonight. They would have moved us into the reality that they were slowly moving us into anyway. So the fact that we're here, the fact that we are uniting, we're uniting the tribes, black, blue, green, gay, straight. We're uniting the people that believe in humanity, that believe in sovereignty, that believe in free will, that believe in the constitutional republic that our founding fathers set up for us to all be equal under God. Okay. Now, however everybody gets to that, I don't need to fight with you about that. We have a bigger enemy. Our enemy is not about that. Our enemy is about submission. Our enemies about control. Our enemies about subverting the humanity that God gave us, the sovereign will that God gave us. They're trying to move us away, and I believe truthfully they're trying to move us to where they're destroying the DNA that God created, which was man, because it said, let us create man in his perfect image, and God created man in his perfect image, and that was DNA. And they're trying to mutilate our DNA into something that is not of what God created. And then at the end of the day, Satan stands in front of God, or evil stands in front of God and says, the people chose my world over your world. I win. And that's not how this goes down. God God is sovereign. God is the ultimate authority. And I believe that we're in a final battle, and we're getting to witness one of the greatest times in humanity. We are fighting literally for humanity. Do you want to keep what God created in humans, or do you want to alter that reality and go into this technology and this other world that has been created by man that's telling us it's a better world. I don't believe that. I believe in gardening. I believe in family. I believe in, you know, holistic medicine. I believe in all the things that God gave us on this earth to heal us and to keep us strong. And we've been lied to about all these, you know, petrochemicals, medical, you know, all the bullshit that we've been fed into to believe that's what's good for us. And so I feel like we are in the final battle for humanity and we're on the front lines. And that's why we're having this space.
Excellent. You know, I'm going to come to MV and Patriot next. I just wanted to say, you know, I heard you mention about, you know, not ever really being able to stop industrial revolution, you know, previously. But I think what sets us apart this time is our access to information and our access to each other. So, like at this point, I mean, like you said,
That
we're
was
all in a
Brian for the
virtual
record.
space.
That was Brian for the
Oh, it was? Okay.
but
Well, yeah.
but
So, I mean,
but
well,
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think the internet backfired because people have a consciousness now that they weren't allowed to have. And that's why, I mean, look at what we're doing. We're having a space tonight and discussing this stuff. If they had their clamps on it, we would never get to have this space. And thank you, Maze.
my pleasure. I'm honored to have been able to host that for you, and I would love to do the second one for you. I'm just trying to think of a fundraiser way so that you could at least get compensated as we all watch it together. I'm going to think through that. But let's go to Lovely MV, and then we'll go to Patriot. And guys, they are kind of extended
Can,
co-hosts. So I'm going to tap
can,
in with them
can I
first, and then
say
we'll go to the
something real
others.
quick before MB
Sure.
and Patriot go? And you guys know I'm not a fluffer. Um, and Mike, I've heard you speak enough times to know that you're a pretty humble dude. But I want people to understand the the level of personality that's present in this space right now. Okay, if you missed the beginning and you haven't had a chance to go through Mike's resume and the roles you've played, some of them that you've watched from childhood or on your dates or in your home, some of you own the movies that show his work. But because he spends so much time with us, I think sometimes people forget the essence of what you've earned, man. Like you have a reputation you earned. And if Mel Gibson was in here or Tom Cruise was in here, like people need to understand like that's the caliber of person that's in here. And that's what he left behind. And much different path, but I know what it felt like when I walked away from something I love that I followed since the age of 5. And there's probably other people in here that have had to make that choice. And so I just want people to understand like who and what's present right now that's fighting this fight that is now tasking you with carry this mission out to wake other people up. So I just want you to know, man, like your reputation is respected, Mike. And I don't know if you hear that enough, brother. But with
Brother,
that,
uh, honestly, sometimes I need to hear that because I forget and because I left that life, but I remember how hard it was to get to that. And to hear you say that, I'm actually very humbled. And it means a lot to me. That's, I thank you. I'll just be quiet and say thank you. And I appreciate what you just said.
Thanks for saying that, Alpha. Okay, go ahead, MV, and then we'll go to Patriot, and then we'll go to the other hands.
Hey, Maze, Alpha, and Mike. I just want to thank you guys for doing this. You know, sometimes we're living our lives and these things aren't even on our consciousness, and we forget the pain that's happening in the world, especially the children. Mike, I know it took a lot of sacrifice for you to do what you did. I just want to commend you for doing that. We need heroes, and I believe that you are with the work that you're doing. We can't even fathom the level of evil that people are doing. And so your movie just shows us that it is possible and it is a reality. reality. So thank you for putting that on our consciousness. I wanted to ask you, what kind of traction is your work getting? Is it getting noticed? It's like things are being exposed all around the world with our governments and the corruption, and stories are getting out. People are more aware of it, but nothing seems to happen. Like it doesn't go to court. It doesn't get on the news. It doesn't, like, nothing's exposed. It is exposed to us, but it's not exposed to the level that we need it to be where it stops. What kind of traction are you getting?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, here's what I believe. I believe that, you know, Out of Shadows, you got to remember, I put it out 4 years ago. So in the first year, it had, I said this in the pre-show, but it had over 100 million views when we were tracking the analytics. And I was like, I mean, I just thought if it got 100,000 views, we were going to be successful because, you don't know when you're making something like that, how it's going to be received, right? Because it's hard for people to fathom. And now it's been 4 years and you guys just watched it and you kind of saw, it's kind of all been proven true. And, it's, it's been a great journey. It's been like I had an amazing career in Hollywood, but I've had an amazing experience since the movie. I mean, I lost a lot. I lost my career. I lost everything I was doing in Hollywood, but I gained something that, I don't think you can purchase. And I know this is going to sound weird and it's going to sound cliche, but I gained something that money can't buy, and what I gained was peace. And I have peace in my heart, I have peace with God, and I have peace with what I'm doing. So the traction that I get, I always give it back to God, and I just say God sees what I've done, he knows what I'm doing, and it's in his timing. I'm not going to get upset. I think Into the Light is actually a better movie than in Out of Shadows because I think it's more relevant to what's happening right now today. And each day that ticks by, I think Into the Light is very eye opening because it opens your mind to one of the questions we had earlier about the clones and AI and how they build uh, psychographics on each of us, and they run payloads on our twins, our digital twins in the metaverse. Most people don't understand that stuff, but it is real. And so, the traction I'm gaining, I don't look at it as personal. I look at it as consciousness. I look at it as how much traction are these topics getting in in the media. And there's, like, Boone Cutler and General Flynn wrote the books 5GW, A Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. These are great tools, just like the movies are great tools. And people that are thirsting for knowledge, because once you realize you've been lied to, you're looking for answers. And the biggest thing about Into the Light is, I think the question it answers is, everybody's like, why couldn't I see this? Why didn't I know this? Well, the answer is, in the world of psychological operations, that's the point. You're not supposed to know you're being manipulated. That's why it's called a psyop. And that's why people get psyoped, because you are the target. The target's the last person that's supposed to know that this is taking place. And so, as far as the traction I'm getting traction watching the people wake up. And that to me is more important. So that's why I do what I do.
Thanks for answering that, Mike. Go ahead, Patriot. Patriot, are you there? All right.
He
Well, while
fell
we're with,
asleep.
He's showing his listener
mm,
for
I am
me.
not asleep at all, Alpha.
I was
I am
about to
not.
say
I am
pumpkin
so
time.
awoke right now. Okay, so I guess what I was wondering. I mean, we said this before, Mike. How you doing? Shout out to you, man. Um, we said this before though. He was like Sound of Freedom before Sound of Freedom. So, Mike, I guess my question is, do you think that you had anything to do with? Because I think what came first, you or Sound of Freedom? I think it was you, right?
Yeah, Out of Shadows Sound of Freedom. When I put Out of Shadows out, Sound of Freedom it
Okay,
basically was done 4 years. Like they did Sound of Freedom like relatively right after Out of Shadows, but they held it for like 3 or 4 years. So
so
I
do
think
you
what
think?
happened
Oh, go ahead.
was
My bad.
I, I just
I got a question after you land though.
okay. I was just gonna say I think Out of Shadows.
Let me close my mic. Hold on. Let me. I gotta.
I I think Out of Shadows prepped the information space for Sound of Freedom. I think
All
people,
right, you answered my question. Okay, keep. There you
yeah,
go.
that's all I think. I think Out of Shadows was like a question mark. People are like, well, maybe this is real. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't really know. Blah 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 blah. And then as time ticked by and more things were revealed, and then Sound of Freedom came out, I think it was God. I think it was God's timing to wake the population up. Like, because people, when you can see something in a movie for whatever reason, people resonate with that stuff. And, thank God they made the film. I would have, uh, you know, uh, I was very supportive of the film. I think I saw a version that I liked better that wasn't the final version, but I think it was still a fantastic film, and I think Out of Shadows prepared the audience or prepared the people for uh, being able to handle Sound of Freedom. So yeah, it was great.
Appreciate that, man. That's you answered the question right there. I mean, that's that gotta be a badge of honor. I mean, because Sound of Freedom did real well. So like you set a a precedent for in a way for that
Yeah,
movie to.
I wish I would have got $1 for every view I got. Like, it's
Yeah,
okay.
that
It's
was
okay.
good, man.
It's okay.
All right, that's it. That's all I had, man. Good film, man. That was good shit.
I love you, Patriot.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I think Hadar, you're next, and then we'll go to Toe Beans, and then back to Kent, and then Amber.
Hi, it's been an amazing watch, but to be very honest with you, I think it's probably because we've been studying the same sort of things. Watching your documentary was like revision for me more than anything else. The only other thing that actually came to light, it was a few years ago, and I don't know if anybody else here remembers it. For some strange, weird reason, I'm kind of shocked that nobody's mentioned it yet. But did anybody hear about the Gateway tapes that were released and they were part of the MK Ultra movement, and they were part of the whole um, idea of training your mind. And it was really
Yeah,
controversial. Sorry,
you're talking about the Robert Monroe ones. That there was like a declassified. It was called the Gateway Experience declassified document.
correct.
Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Now there was a friend of mine that I've not spoken to her in like what 2.5 years now, but I've actually reached out to her because she tried them, but then she just disappeared after she tried them. So I think she's okay. But yeah, I've not heard from her for a long time. Um, but yeah, that was something that they actually released, and people were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to try it," and I was just like, "No, this isn't something I'm going to even dabble with." Um, but within your documentary, yes, there's a lot of things that you did touch up on, which I'd already had come across, and there's quite a few other like similar works. I don't know, Mike, if you've heard about a series called The Arrivals.
I have not. I was just kind of in my own little world, as I was coming to my awakening. We all kind of come to it through a different process, and yeah, no, I'd love to hear about it. Whatever. What do you got?
Well, The Arrival, it kind of covers the same sort of thing, but it makes the connections through a lot of movies. Um, the esoteric agenda, and how it's combined with manipulation and deviation of basically the true sort of altruistic beliefs within humanity that exist as a natural construct. But a lot of these things are designed in a way where they give you this illusion, well, you know, you're an individual and you can have your individualistic choices and you can do what you want. And it's it's like a backdrop to a hedonistic future where they actually dictate what you're supposed to like and what you're not supposed to like based on how they propagate these things. I mean, even somebody like Goebbels, don't like quoting him, but he said the best form of propaganda is the form of propaganda that you don't even realize it is propaganda. And that is something that you see as a common theme in a lot of the media that we consume. It's sort of hidden in plain sight. I mean, it even talks about how Walt Disney was hiding sexual imagery within the artwork. It's
Yeah,
only when,
I touched on that a little bit, Shadows, because I mean, like I could have gone. You got to understand, man. Like when I was doing Out of Shadows, this was 6 years ago. Okay,
yeah,
and I was trying to like walk a delicate path because what I know and what I believe to be true, if I said what I know, people would be like, "Oh, he's crazy. He's out of his mind." But if I, part of the art of presenting information is like, let me get you to think about this. Like, I mean, someone like you who's well researched and well read, and the Out of Shadows was not made for you. It was made for somebody you want to go. Hey, take a look at this and let's have a talk. Hey,
yeah.
let's talk about this. Let me watch this, and then let's talk about some of the things I want to show you. And that's kind of where I was at with that film. Was like, because I mean, my family thought I was crazy when I started making the film. Like, they were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, you guys don't really understand, what I kind of understand, and I might be a little more, you know, enlightened to some of these things than you are because of my career. So doesn't mean you guys don't know. I'm talking about family members and friends. I mean, people close to me. We all have different experiences. We all have different conversations. We all have different interactions. And through mine, my mind was opened and I did what I did and I put it out there. And if people believe it, great. If they don't, great. I'm not trying to sway anyone. I'm just saying take a look at this information and come to your own conclusion. And that to me is like, I think that's like the healthiest place to come at, trying to awaken people. Like, no one's going to listen to you if you beat information into them, because I wouldn't.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's really bizarre because even the whole MK Ultra, I can't remember for the life of me, but I will, and I will share it as soon as I find out the name. There was actually a movie about it where they took a group of people and they said that there's a big prize fund, and it was literally a psyop. They get locked up in a room and they have to make certain decisions, like maybe kill the person who sat next to you, or if you have to kill one person, who would it be? And then they would all collectively
Well,
choose.
there's a movie called The Experiment based on the Stanford experiments. Have you ever watched that?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it might have been that. That might have been the movie I watched.
I think that's kind of, it sounds like what you're referencing. Hey, I just
Yeah,
followed you back, man. You can DM
excellent.
me now and just like send me anything you want to send me. I'd
Oh,
love to
that's
check it out.
really really appreciated because there's the only one thing, and I thought maybe it's because you've not looked that deeply into it, but the hidden faith of the founding fathers.
I'd
There's an
love to just send it to me. I'll go over it.
that would be absolutely amazing, and I feel honored. But it's so great that I'm allowed the space on here with Maze, and I am grateful for her that I'm able to speak to people like yourself. Because most of my life, I'll be honest, I was known even within my own family as, oh, he's the weird one. He
Oh
believes in
yeah.
weird
Well,
stuff.
everybody, listen. It's funny. Like everybody, oh, it's conspiracy theorist. Well, you're only a conspiracy theorist if it's not true. right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
like, it's like you better get a conspiracy theorist friend right now to figure out what's going on in the world. So, find one, you know.
I mean,
Because
did you ever come across a guy called, I think, I don't know how he pronounces his name. Is it Doc Marquis or Doc Marquis? Did you ever come across him?
I don't think I have, brother.
He's like an ex-Illuminati witch. And believe it or not, the FBI used to use him whenever there were occult murders that had taken place that had occult rituals connected to them. He was an
Well,
expert on
none
it.
of this stuff is new. It's just now
Yeah,
it's what's happening is the public is now seeing it. I mean, the people in power are the people that kind of been around. I mean, it's just like someone said earlier, the internet. People, there's, I mean, like, look at the thing with the Trump thing. There's thousands of cell phones with thousands of pieces of footage, and they don't even know how to spin a narrative right now because they they don't even have they don't have all the
absolutely.
footage, so they don't know an official narrative to set because something might turn up, and that would blow their whole thing. So they haven't set one. So it's just be patient, be cool, and just kind of you know absorb the information, digest it, and then kind of come. You got to discern over it, pray over it. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, as I was
Thanks for
saying,
your
so like,
questions, man.
no problem. Like I said, it's an honor to have been able to speak to you because it's very rare that you can watch a documentary and say, I'd love to say thank you to that person. And it's like, how am I going to go about doing
I'm
that
nobody
if I've done this?
special, you guys. I'm just a
Oh, no,
guy that woke up and I did what I did. That's all I am.
Well, you are special because you went against the grain. You took a lot of hits. You put your career, you sacrificed it, and I think that for the most part, even half of like what you did, people wouldn't even consider. So to me, I think you're setting an example for what people will need to do if we expect to overturn this. That's hugely, heroic. And yeah, you deserve all the
you
credit.
do.
So just say thank you. That's it. You just gotta
Thank
be
you.
like, thank
I
you.
will say thank you. I will say
You
thank you, but I don't look at myself that way. But thank you.
maybe you don't, but I do see you as.
Thanks, Hadar.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly
Oh.
say something to him. I do
Hadar
actually.
likes to chit chat. You know what I'm saying? This is what he does. He's like the perfect friend to go to a restaurant. He'll never let like an opportunity to. So I
I'm
love you,
sorry.
but go ahead.
I'm sorry.
It's
I just
okay.
wanted to say that effectively you're a digital warrior
Well,
because the
thank you.
war that we fight now, not everybody will be on a battleground. You will be in the digital space and the
Thank you.
cyberspace, and you're a warrior for good in the cyberspace, and people like you should be recognized and accredited for your efforts and your bravery for speaking out against something so dangerous and effectively life-threatening. Ultimately, that's the direction it can put you into.
Pass
Yep.
over the microphone,
Sorry,
Hadar. I love
sorry,
you.
sorry.
He's no, I listen, I love you, but I just wanted to make sure that the people who've been waiting forever can ask Mike a question. But he does deserve all the praise. So I love listening to you, pour it into him because I can tell that this has definitely been a journey. It's one where we need to get that strength back from people who recognize the sacrifice. So with that being said, I would love to go to I think Tobeans and then Kent, and then we're gonna go to Amber, and then I just brought a couple other people up. Hopefully we can get through all of them. Go ahead, jump in.
Hello. Well, first of all, the documentary is great. I actually saw it, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, and I saw it alone, and I cried for quite a while afterwards. And then, but I had been researching those sorts of topics even like long before Pizzagate. Really, like there's so much history to all the obvious child trafficking that goes on behind all this stuff, and the intimate connection of that with MK Ultra is really fascinating. Along the way, I've sort of researched it. As I've researched it, I've sort of come to the conclusion that it seems like kind of an old formula. Like it's certainly the techniques deployed go back before MK Ultra. I mean, that's the official programs that were set up by the CIA, where it became very like institutionalized. But I think in a lot of ways, the forces that actually helped shape it, especially in the Hollywood angle, were there before that. I mean, Judy Garland in the 30s and early 40s, she was heavily drugged and worked to the right, works ragged, and they were mismanaging her self-esteem, and there was some inappropriate sexual stuff going on. She was forced to have an abortion at one point, like trauma, all these traumas sort of foisted upon her. It's like the techniques were actually being deployed by the people in Hollywood sort of independently, and I think a lot of these sorts of things then get rolled into MK Ultra more so than MK Ultra necessarily branching out to the movies first. But it was, it was always there, even in terms of like the content, the demoralization, the desensitization, all of that kind of stuff was actually going on in the 20s. And by the early 30s, you had the public really moving against it. There was a whole period where they brought in the production code, where they started censoring the movies. It was a response to things like all the early gangster films, where you're essentially being asked to sympathize with the gangster, with the, which is interesting. And then they start reversing it, and you're supposed to sympathize with the lawman. But what's interesting to me as well is if you research, because I know all my old Hollywood stuff, I love all the old black and white shit. So I know a lot about that period, and all of the heads of those studios were Jewish. And, everyone's along the way of this space, we've all touched upon the idea of a battle between good and evil going on with all this. And it's weird because to me, it's like the synagogue of Satan, frankly, because so much of early Hollywood is formed, it's all the studios founded, and most of the major writers and producers are these sort of European Jewish migrants who, frankly, they come in there, and it's then you start getting Cary Grant turning up in films like I Was a Male War Bride. I think it was like 1945. Cary Grant appears in much of the film in drag. Then you get Some Like It Hot, but in the early 60s, Billy Wilder was another European Jewish migrant. And a lot of that stuff seems to come from a fairly Jewish angle. And I think by the time MK Ultra, the Laurel Canyon period's really interesting. And I'm glad that was in the documentary because so few people know about that. And during that period, they really learned how to make cults, and I think
Do you think? Okay. Can I ask you a question? Do
Mhm.
you think that this was like a ideology that they just perfected over time?
Yeah, I do. And actually, I mean, what's really, really interesting is that that's what I've been thinking for a while. And then following last night's space, I got reading today about Zoroastrianism. And it literally basically is about that. They basically have this whole thing. They've got a god. I think it was like, the names of all the language escape me, but they have a central god figure. But then they also believe in these sort of like, they basically call them demons. They were called Dewa. Some reason I remember what they were called. And so the Dewa, though, are basically fallen gods. They were once gods, but they've swayed over to the dark path. And they are now the great deceivers, the lie. The lie. And it's like, I was like, Jesus Christ, that is what we're looking at here. This is an ancient tradition of people trying to manipulate each other. And it could be
So it
shadows
goes
and
back to the
evil.
battle between good and evil.
Yeah, it's all connected to that, and it's yes, and through the if you follow the especially what they can do with frequencies and all of the poisons, the way they've weaponized food and nutrition, they've dumbed us all down, and they're suppressing us. They're suppressing our true vibrational frequencies. You could also then with the music industry. There's the whole thing about the the standard tuning change that occurred in the middle of the 20th
And
century.
they took it from 432 to 440 because it's the closest thing to 432 that there
Yeah.
was that creates a vibration that disturbs the human that is undetectable.
Yeah, exactly. And they got rid of bells. And, slowly you have to look back and you start to, for me, I start to think, especially if you look at the classical composers, I mean, some of those guys were composing their pieces at the behest of elites of the period. They were sort of commissioned to write some of them, and they were almost rituals. And I feel like the healing power of music has been perverted. Again, in the Zoroastrian stuff I was reading, there was an important role. The way that they described their sort of priest class, they described them as songwriter poets. And it was literally, these people are basically writing
Well,
poetry and
think about
song.
it. I mean, everything in our world is vibration.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything in our world is vibration. And if you think about the Bible, it says, "In the beginning there was the Word was God, and the Word was with God." The
Yeah,
Word is a thought that becomes a frequency when you speak the word. When you speak a word, it becomes a physical manifestation of a thought. So
yeah,
what you're saying is all in line with how all this gets manipulated, every bit of it. And that's why the word of God and all of that is so important. Because if you go back to the 10 commandments, just that alone, that's the 10 commandments that God gave the world to manage themselves. And we are so far from that, it's not even possible.
exactly, exactly. And with that whole God said, "Let there be light," I always stop people and say, which came first, the light or sound? Because in that sentence, to me, sound is the first thing that's going to happen, because God said, "Let there be light." So that's the sound of frequency starting to emanate everything else. So I reckon sound comes first.
Yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole
Yeah,
It
that
that
is.
is deep as shit, actually.
we could go down that for all night. And but I've been down that rabbit hole a little bit, so I'm not far off from where you're at.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Do you got anything else, or should we move on?
I do have one more thing, and it's specifically related to the pedophiles. And it's everyone knows about the codes that they had with the pizza and everything, but I
Oh,
haven't seen.
real quick, by the way, all of those codes that Liz pointed out in Out of Shadows was validated by the FBI as code words for pedophilia.
Yeah,
So when people are saying this isn't true, it's all bullshit, it's not real, no, the FBI themselves validated those code words that were in those emails as pedophile code words. So
yeah.
I'll land that there, but keep going.
I well, see, well, what I'm going to say then might blow your mind a little bit, because I actually believe that I've observed an operation to create new code words. And what I mean is, I actually was trying to. There was a space I was listening to, I think yesterday, that was touched on Pizzagate and child trafficking. It came up briefly, and I messaged MV. If you check your DMs, I DM'd you about it, because I was like, "Is this an appropriate time for this?" I don't know whether it is, but I think this discussion certainly is. Um, in 2017, at the height of Pizzagate stuff, I was all over that, and I was part of like a crew of people. There was a whole bunch of us communicating with each other daily to sort of alert each other to these pedos on Twitter. I mean, this was years before I had this account. I've had different accounts, and eventually this took such a toll on me. Actually, just the emotional burden of what I eventually got involved in, because I got real hardcore about it. Like, I basically went undercover to try and catch some out, and I did eventually have like two. I'm pretty sure I got two people arrested and a child liberated through my effort. But fuck, it was dark. So like I had to pull away from it.
Dude,
But
what you're telling me about Dark, it
yeah.
literally, I would literally hear stories from victims and people and couldn't even function for 3 or 4 days. It was so bad.
Oh, I can only imagine. Like I've talked to some victims too. Like I've met people who were abused from such an early age that they actually have like muscular. All of their pelvic region is like full of muscular problems, and they, it's the doctor that you were had in the documentary. She must be dealing with some of that stuff, she says. So, but yeah, no. What happened anyway? And at the height of Pizzagate, there was a case. His name was Matt Estes, and he was a real ugly ginger cunt. He makes me really angry. But the at the time there was viral news about it. It went everywhere, and Tumblr was still a thing back then. And I actually had an account, and I saw it all over Tumblr. It was everywhere. And then suddenly now, if you go and try and find it, it is totally, totally scrubbed. But the news at that time had this dude's picture, and he was in his football uniform. He had the number 94 on his shirt, And if you go on Twitter now and search either the football emoji or the number is hashtag 94, you will find an endless fucking screed of pedophiles all over Twitter, and they're using this as a new dog whistle code. And I can't help but think, how did because this news was everywhere. It was so in your face and back in 2017, 2018, and then now it's scrubbed, and there's this whole new emergent code that I haven't seen anyone, not even Liz Crokin, talking about. So that's just something for everyone to have a look at.
I'm sure they probably switched their code.
Yeah, well, that's what I think I've observed, and that I'm pretty sure this is it because there's just tons of them.
Well,
So
Liz and I get so inundated with, I mean, you have to understand how many people reach out to us, with different stories or different things. But what you just said makes a lot of sense to me because I mean, think about it. If you're onto their code words, you're onto their code, they're going to change it. So there's got to be a
exactly.
way. I mean, there's no way they're going to stop what they're doing. They're just going to switch their tactics. So no,
Um,
I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
there was a slight other theory I had to it though, is that given the fact that like it was also around the same time that the QAnon thing started, I've always looked at it and wondered whether maybe.
But just a heads up, I just want you to know that typically on stage we have to kind of be a little bit more concise just because of the time constraints that we have with Mike. But there are other hands, Tobin. So if you could just
Finish
stick to
real.
another point or two. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I almost wondered whether maybe this was a deliberate thing that someone deliberately somehow got the message out, changed the code. This is the new code. But I wonder almost if it wasn't like deliberately done by, I guess, someone positive who is trying to stop it so that they can get all these people self-identifying. And by creating the new code, they're all emboldened. They think that they can go on and do it all really publicly and no one's going to notice. Because I tell you, I've been undercover with them and they think no one knows, but I know. And I've talked to quite a few people who have noticed it as well. So it's definitely something that's there. But I'll leave it there. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And you know what? You might be right. I mean, like, there's, this is going to play out. It's going to play out. You just got to pick your side, good or evil, and fight. That's where we're at, and that's what we're doing. I'm standing up for children. I mean, if there's no one in this space, I guarantee you, that wants to see a child hurt. There's not. It's just not possible. Everybody in here would defend a child. And that's where we unite. We unite with that. We unite with protecting the youth of this nation and the youth of this republic. So, you want to take some more questions?
Yes, I do. When we're like, I think, and that's why I'm excited that we're going to explore count ways because when people are given information like this, and I know that it sends people kind of spinning in different directions, but I think that
Am I up
the
yet?
what separates us.
Hey,
Okay. Hi. Just so you know, Nate, next time when you get up here, just raise your hand like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And then yeah, we'll come to you. But I moved you down for a second. With that being said, I just want people to know that there is so much power in this connection that we have, this window of opportunity, that I would say technology and these platforms, like people from all over the world are able to come and talk about this, are able to watch this documentary. There's so much power in that. And I just want to remind you why it's so important to have tolerance for each other's differences, because what we fight about and sling mud about is so shallow in comparison to what we're talking about right now. And the things that we really have in common, the things that we care about at our core, which is to keep, our sovereignty of our thoughts and the freedom that we wish to preserve and pass along to our children. These are the things that connect everybody, I guess, at the core value, the core values that we have. So, with that being said, though, the only thing, because I hear elites being brought up quite a bit, and the only thing that really separates an elite person, quote unquote, from you is, sorry, Harry, I don't know if you meant to do that. but I'm gonna just mute your mic for a second. Is this money? But our financial system, our economic system, has been so exploited, and it's been a gradual thing, but we're at the point now where I do want to table this as something that we explore as a potential solution, and which is going to have to be extreme, whatever it is, because the hold that this has on our society is major. But it just seems to me that there's something there that we need to, I don't know, unpack. But anyway, let's go to Kent. I think you were next, love, right? And then we'll go to Amber.
Yeah, thanks so much, mate. I love this discussion, mate. What I wanted to bring to the table, Michael, was that I've worked in behavioural science for over 30 years in my career, so I've had a reasonable background. And what I wanted to put forward to you and Maze and everyone was the thought that we have to be aware that we're already pre-programmed. As we've grown up in a world that is not
Ding,
telling us
ding,
the truth.
ding. 100%.
Yeah, yeah, and this is one of the things, we talk about discernment and belief systems and morals and ethics, but our whole belief system is predetermined from the day we're born by the circumstances we live in. And already here, even though we're rational, intelligent, intellectual people having a wonderful discussion on this, just keep in mind that even the reality that we're living in is very much determined by the governments and people that we grew up around. Yeah, our whole belief system of what's real and what's not real, especially with things like the phenomenon and all the sort of stuff that's coming up now. Just a thought, folks, that predetermined thinking, predetermined belief system biases are built into us. They're very hard to break. But when you try to pull yourself back into the third person a bit more and have a look at what's going around you, just try and pull your belief system back a bit as well, and try and see things for what they are. And it gives you a better understanding of how the governments are trying to basically coerce us into a certain way of thinking. Thanks for your time, Michael. I just wonder what your thoughts on that were, mate.
Did you hear?
I,
Did you
I
hear his question,
apologize.
my?
Cut out. Can you rephrase the question real quick, Kent? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, mate. Yeah, just how much do you believe the pre-programmed system that we live in has already built walls around our belief system when
Well,
we're trying to discern the truth?
Kent, here's the thing. The world that I mean, think about it like this. When you're a child, when your parents, were raising you, or your grandparents, I mean, everything that we've seen is only what we've been shown, right? So we only know really, the I mean, you can call it programming, you can call it whatever. I mean, think about music. Like, for example, I hear certain music, and the first thing I want to do is go make a margarita. What triggers me to want to go make a margarita when I hear, Zach Brown play, ass, I got my ass in the water, toes in the sand, I ain't got no worries in the world, and the cold beer in my hand. That makes me, I look at my life. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, that's programming. And we've been indoctrinated into this programming since we were, since we've been alive. We don't know anything else. And so the awakening that we're experiencing right now is truly, I think, biblical. I think it's enlightening. I think we're seeing the deception being pulled back, and people are seeing the world the way it really is, and it's a scary thing. It's a process. And look at where we are today. I mean, look at where we are. You're talking about 2017, 2018. Some of the things that we've all gone through, as we've walked through this walk, you know. But look at where we are today. Look at how many people are realizing, hey, something's not right. Something's a little off here. Something, maybe I've been lied to. And so, yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, I mean, just for a little bit of context, sorry, just 1 second, Maze. For context as well, it's interesting that the most powerful sense in the human psyche is quite often music and sound, and it's also the first external sense to be developed in the fetus. when you're starting to develop your senses in as a fetus, the very first external sense that you develop is sound, listening to your mother's womb. So it's interesting that that's one of the most powerful things throughout life.
Well, what is Satan? Satan is the god of the prince of the airways. I mean, think about that. I mean, think about where that comes from. I mean, think about he was the chief musician in heaven. I mean, think about what we are all vibrational creatures. I mean, I know this is going to sound really, really, really weird and out there, but if you think of Avatar, like the first Avatar, how everything was connected through vibration. I mean, I know that gets way out there, but I mean, there is something to that. Like we are all connected through the, and I touched on this in Into the Light, the hive mind, the consciousness of the population. And that's what Edward Bernays understood. He understood the hive mind. He understood that it's not what people, it's kind of what the population believes is the truth, and it may not really be the truth. And what we have is two entities battling for what the population believes to be true. You have one side fighting to influence the population with their beliefs, and you have another side fighting to influence the population with their beliefs. And whoever has the most access and placement to the population gets to dictate what the population more or less believes. And what's happened with the internet and with the expansion of all of the technology that we had, it's kind of backfired, and people are now, there's pockets of people believing things that are not being mainstream fed through the media. And that's what you're seeing with what we're doing right now in this space. You're seeing it all over. You're seeing, you're seeing people speaking out and stepping up that you would have never seen do this stuff 5 years ago. Because if we don't unite and come together, we are going to lose humanity. We have got to unite the tribes. We've got to put down our differences. We've got to get together, and we've got to just say, look, I believe in your sovereign rights. You believe in my sovereign rights. And we believe in the Constitution of this republic. Let's stand up. Let's 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 spread the word. Let's go vote. Let's get involved. I mean, we've been asleep for my whole life. I was not active in political affairs ever until I got paralyzed, until I started waking up. And I just encourage all of you to do whatever it is that you feel called to do. Not, I'm not telling you to do anything. So that's my answer to you, brother.
Thank you for that question and for that answer. All right. I believe Amber is next. Jump in, Amber.
Hi guys, thanks for the space. It's really awesome to hear everybody and watch that film with everybody. It's a different experience sharing it with other people besides my husband. Um, Mike, I've had like a lot of info I dropped on you. I hope I didn't overwhelm you. Um, Maze, I've followed you for a while. Alpha, I don't know if you remember me, but I think we connected maybe a year ago when I shared my family's experience. But just to give you a little like bullet point background of who I am and why I'm here. My husband was a stuntman, and in 2014, I started a petition for stunt people to be included at the Oscars. I was super naive about it. I didn't realize all the politics behind it. And in hindsight, my family and I have been pretty much like under the powers of Hollywood's radar since then. I'm pretty sure they used TMZ to vet me for my politics in 2015. They brought me in for an audition and asked me only one question, and what do you think about Trump running? And it was like the most odd audition I've ever been at. Nobody was there. Um, and and then in 2016, the petition got a lot of traction, and the company that had the website contacted me to organize a protest to get more support, and I was like, sure. So we did, and the Academy was silent. But the following year, um, during Oscar season, my husband, what now looks like survived a hit on set on camera. We thought it was an accident. We were led to believe that it was an accident for years until like statute of limitations ran out. And have been through hell ever since. And um, we had one of the top attorneys that were like the fighter for the little guy come to us, and he turned out to be one of the most corrupt, and he's under criminal investigation now for running like the biggest legal racket ever. His trial starts next month, and he was the Aaron Brockovich attorney. They made a Oscar-winning movie about it. Um, Anyways, so we've been through a lot. I shared a lot with you, Mike, in the DMs. I hope I didn't overwhelm you. I know you heard a lot of people's wild stories. But just to bring it back really quick to your film, I had a question. I wanted to find out if I saw a little part of it where it was a clip in the Playboy Mansion, and I don't know if you know what you caught there, but it was somebody was like, "What happens in the grotto stays in the grotto," and the person that said that is one of the castmates on the same show that my lawyer was on, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. He's also the brother-in-law of Rick and Kathy Hilton and the uncle to Nikki Rothschild, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like that little clip that you had right there.
Well, if you want to know the truth,
Mhm.
I had a probably 10-minute segment in the original film about the Playboy Mansion. But the problem was someone claimed, I had someone come forward that claimed that Hugh Hefner was a CIA psychologist.
Yeah.
I couldn't, for the average person to find that could validate that claim that this person made. And I was very disappointed because I had to cut out that entire section. And what you saw was the section that, that was, I could put in there because it wasn't really disputable. The problem that I had was, um, I think there's more to that section that I wish I could have gone deeper into, but the reality was I couldn't prove any of it, so it just been conjecture, and it would have discredited a lot of the film. So I took that out. So that's where that was.
It was a cool little moment. I just didn't know if you realized that you caught like somebody connected family ties to Rothschild saying
I
that,
did not
which I
know
thought was
that
like funny.
at the time. I did not know that, but I I didn't know that, but I mean I do know what I do believe, but I couldn't prove it. If you
Yeah,
can't prove it, you can't say it.
yeah,
So you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like
I
I
totally know what you
think,
mean. They
yeah.
will come
So
at
I'm
you
not.
with
I mean, I
guns
was
blaring
trying to give
later.
people, well, look at this, look at these things, think about the connections. And if you actually start trying to connect the people behind the scenes to the people, you'll see that. I mean, not, that's the thing that no one does. No one ever like really goes back and looks behind the scenes at who's connected to who and how they're, you know, interrelated, or,
It's so small too. Once you start doing
it's
that.
a tiny, tiny little network, actually, if you start really getting into it. So,
Mhm.
that's up for the public to to, to discern over, or to research. Um, that's really I was pointing out with that section.
Yeah. One other thing, your PT that dropped all that on you, was it in Ventura County?
My what?
Your physical therapist or the
No, no, no. That was in LA County.
okay.
Um, and yeah, no. And I've had a lot of people question me about her, and I'm like, they're like, well, shouldn't she have been reporting that? Well, of course she was reporting that. The only time she got to deal with the victims was after they went through the system.
Yeah, and then like people don't understand too, when you're dealing with that level of power, you can't report things. Like, so my husband, we literally have footage where it very clearly shows that it wasn't an accident, and we tried going to law enforcement, like the local police, the FBI, on multiple occasions, and they're just like, these are really powerful people.
Well, you're dealing with a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors at play with those things.
Yeah, and then one last thing, really quick. Have you ever considered starting a Bible study group?
Not me, but I will say this. What I've been working for 6 years on something, and it's gonna come out. I do have an answer to this stuff, and I've been working very hard on it for 6 years. And I mean, there will be a time when it all starts to come to fruition. It's just it's not there yet. It's not ready to be scaled yet. But I would love to. I would love to start a Bible study at some point. I've just been so focused on other things, and I travel so much. I
Yeah,
don't think I can be consistent.
I
So,
got it.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Amber. All right. So I was going to take three more hands and then see if Michael, because I think Michael, you had some stuff that you wanted to cover. I wasn't sure if you wanted to do that while Mike is still here or not, but I just want to
Well,
give
I
you
don't,
a heads up. So, yep.
it's if his hour is not coming up, it's all good because he knows the proposal and the stuff that we have
Mike,
coming.
whatever you want to talk about, I'll hang out for you for a bit, and then I'll jump. But let's get through the questions, and then I'll do whatever you'd like me to do.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay. So I believe the next person is Angry Citizen, and then we'll go to Silent Majority. Jump in.
So I just want to recap a bit to what I was hearing earlier. So basically, our whole personality is dictated by our environment and what we've been exposed to. So me spending a lot of time on social media, I've been probably affected by the algorithm a bit. But um, being on the far right, is there any possibility that I could have been far left had I never been exposed to the algorithm, or had I been exposed to a different algorithm? You know what I'm getting at? At what point have I been controlled, and where does it stop, and where does it start? You know?
I mean, that's a hard thing to really assess not knowing you, but we are highly influenced, I think, in ways like, and there are, over time, we tend to begin to take pieces of information and it firms up thoughts into beliefs. I don't know if it would switch somebody all the way from far left to far right or whatever, but that's just one example of many. I think that it really would be shocking to find out how many beliefs that we have formed that we never really thought about over just having a box in our living room for decades upon decades, telling us what's going on beyond what we can perceive. So we
Could I?
begin to believe that that's the real world out there, and then so all these things. I mean, it would probably be very shocking. Are you trying to comment on what I said, Kent? I don't know why.
Yeah. I was just going to
Kent.
offer. I offered this to a psychology
Mhm.
professor at university when we were talking about nature nurture, and it was that our physical makeup determines the size and number of windows in the human mind, and the environment that we grow up in opens the curtains. If some of your curtains are never opened, you'll never be given the opportunity to think about what's beyond that window. That's just some food for thought about when you're brought up in certain societies. I've lived all over the world. Some people can never have certain thought processes because it's just never given them that opportunity to have that in their life. So that's just a bit of predetermination for you to think about.
Yep. Thanks, Kent. Okay, jump in, Silent Majority.
Hey, happy Saturday, everybody. Um,
Happy Saturday, sir.
Yeah, oh yeah. I was on a golf cart all day out promoting Trump. But hey, Mike, I got a question for you, my brother. When is End of the Light Part 2 coming out?
I don't have Into the Light anything. I still think Into the Light, the first one's relevant. It's going to be relevant for the next 2 or 3 years. So I got a different idea, but that's down the road.
Okay, and then the last thing I had was, we're talking about how we're programmed, right? And here's the big picture that I see. And I'm a very positive person, okay? I'm an optimist, if you want to say that. If you look at what goes on in society, if you watch the news, which I don't even watch the news anymore, but if anybody watches the news, what do you see on the news? Oh, 25 people got shot on whatever. 117 people got shot July 4th in Chicago. 17 people died, right? What that's called, okay, in just the basic realm of psychology, is called anchoring, okay? Because what happens is a negative event will create more of an emotion than a positive event does, okay? And that's how we've been programmed all these years. I learned this in sports psychology because I was a golfer. I was a college golfer, and I learned my coach was very good, and he said he was a Marine, and he said, "Look, you got to understand something. When you hit a bad shot, you have to understand how to deflect that emotion." Because a lot of times, if anybody's played golf into space, right, or anything in life really, but something bad happens to you, you're probably going to remember that more than if something good happens to you. And that's just basically the way that we've been programmed all our lives. And Mike woke me up a while back, and I've been paying attention to a lot of this stuff. And if you watch the news, you watch anything, if it's negative, they're going to put it on the news. But if you adopt 3 kids, oh no, that doesn't show up on the news, you know? So think about that. Think about what's being put in our faces. And look at what happened to Donald Trump. They tried to assassinate him. Okay, so everybody's going to remember that the rest of our lives. I'm 54 years old. When I'm 85 or 90 or whatever, I'm going to always remember that. I'm always going to remember the fist in the air. I'm going to remember all of it. Okay, but and I'll remember what day it was, 7/13, 2024. So just pay attention to that because that's how they're programming us. And if you look at other things, why do you think Black Lives Matter has all this bullshit go on and they got these riots and all this other bullshit going on? They're bringing out our emotions and they're trying to activate us to do something else, which we're not going to do because we're a lot smarter than that. So we're going to take the alternative action, right? And we're going to get involved locally and make things happen in the right direction. So there you go. So just pay attention to that because they're feeding us negative stuff to anchor our brains to react to that and make it normalcy. Look what happened in the Olympics. Look at what we just all saw. I mean, really?
By the way, I heard there was a huge power outage all over France. Did anybody else hear that? I
Yeah,
just
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
saw
I
yeah,
it.
heard it.
a huge
Yeah,
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. Get a generator. Everybody get a
Interesting.
generator. If you don't have a generator, get one. Okay. Thank you, Maze, for the time. Mike, thanks for the answer.
Sure
Good
thing.
to see you, brother.
I guess I'm chopped liver up here, Silent. All right, Silent.
Okay,
Um,
Alpha. Thank you, sir, for helping my father-in-law out. I appreciate that on the show. Thank you.
I've been so tempted
Wait.
to jump in quite a few times, but being able to hear people's conversations is really important. And it's not the first night I've had this thought. I just want people to kind of, we don't have to talk about it, but if people could just think about it, or tonight or the next few nights, you know, when we say, "Oh, look at this person has an addiction," whether it's drug, alcoholism, gambling, pornography, whatever, and we're like, "How can someone have an addiction?" But we're
Maze, I can't
all.
hear Alpha if he's talking.
I'll jump down because I can't see a lot of the hands either. So let me just reset myself, and I'll be back in a minute.
Okie dokie, Smokey. So let's tap in with Brian real quick while I get Alpha back up here.
Hey, good evening.
Go ahead,
Good
Brian.
evening, everybody. How are you?
Hey.
Yeah.
Good. How are you? Wake up. Take an espresso shot or something.
Uh,
Doesn't he sound like he just woke up?
yeah, that's just my regular voice. I do have a deep voice. Um, I must say that I am thankful to life. Uh, I can say now that I am on the highest frequency, and I appreciate people that are here speaking. I listen. Um, thank God I wouldn't be myself if it wasn't for just being in tune with staying one. I'm very appreciative of that. I don't have much to say, but I just give good vibes, positive vibes to any and everyone in this group space. Uh, Thanks, Maze.
Well, thanks, Brian. I'm a vibe person too. And I kicked off the whole space with the intention because I want people to know that we're gonna be faced with very heavy, very dark, I think, information, especially in the day and age where information and our access to it is probably more than we've ever been used to as a human civilization. And so with that being said, it is very important to be conscious of how it's affecting you, how it's impacting you. Practicing, energetic hygiene was like such a weird thing to say. But I think now, better understanding that there is this, there it is a
May I
thing. I
say
mean,
one
this
last
is
thing?
backed by science. Yeah, go ahead, and
For
then yeah,
anyone,
we'll
for
go back to
anyone
Alpha.
that is struggling with an addiction, I say my best advice to you is to think of something really good that happened in your childhood.
But Brian, this is totally off the subject. Just so you know, we are here for a specific
Oh,
It's
question and
not.
this is
answer.
totally
It's
helping with subject
it.
matter.
He's actually Brian's setting me up.
With what?
That's for a great
Is he?
yes.
Okay,
So
perfect.
finish that thought on addiction, Brian, because sometimes divine intervention is just divine intervention.
If you
So
get
fire that off, brother.
if you get caught up and wrapped up in your flesh, it's gonna eat you up. Use your spirit, use your mind. Literally, that's the first source. You can be anything. I promise. Like withdrawals, just snap out of it. That's it.
So here's Altani. Sometimes things are just divine because Mike not being able to hear me, making me drop down, presenting the opportunity for Brian to come up. Like it's just sometimes it's just perfection. And what I was saying, what Mike didn't get to hear, what I was leading into is, when we talk about addictions and we think about like alcohol addiction, drug addiction, gambling addiction, porn addiction, like all these different addictions, or even right now, when Brian said if you're struggling with an addiction, how many people just their natural intuitive reaction was, "Oh, I don't have an addiction," or "Ah, that can't happen to me." And newsflash, everybody here is struggling with an addiction right now. And some of it's in part because we don't have a choice because we're in an information war. But television, radio, social media, we all have an addiction to this electronic form of communication. And because they've perfected this convenience to make this addiction, is a lot to do with why we're at. I mean, if trust me, I don't want an infrastructure attack because I love music and I love talking to y'all. But sometimes I have the moment, and this is what I was going to tell her. But if you just think about it the next few days, if the power plug was pulled on not just our country, but the whole world, and you had to walk outside to see what was going on in the world, would the world you're walking out into on your block, in your little community, would it reflect what you see on the media? Would it reflect what you're hearing on social media? And just think about that for a second. Is the picture how you feel. Some of you, I mean, I read the DMs and the emails. Some of you are struggling with some horrific anxiety, and like I can feel your words. And I just want to remind you guys that yes, we're in an information war. Yeah, there's no time to rest, but don't always think that the picture of what's being told in your ears and put in front of your eyes is supposed to replace what's going on in your immediate situation. Like, eh, so I think Mike said this or Brian, one of them said this, and I agree. Even if you don't believe in it, if they're doing it and it affects our life, then it's real, and I completely agree with that. But just don't let them have that power over you. And one of the ways to defeat that is what the gentleman that was just up here talking about is Brian. We are our energy and our souls, who we are as human beings, is way more powerful than we've ever been taught. We haven't even tapped into the full potential of what we're capable of. And think about that. And as we move forward and then things start, the potential for things to get a lot more darker and sinister here in the few months is very real. Don't forget to ground yourself, you guys. Do what the amazing Maze does. She every day, you guys, this woman takes time to just tap into the earth and sit under a tree and grab grass. And I think we all should be challenged to do that. Just fight, but don't let yourself forget what's real in your immediate circle too. And hopefully that made sense. Or maybe if somebody needed to hear it, I hope you heard it.
Thank you, Alpha. Yep, I'm a tree hugger, y'all. Okay. And
Hey, I'm
I'm
not gonna
telling
lie,
you, I
Maze.
give.
I wake up every morning and I ground and I work out in the ground, like barefooted in the grass. Like that's my thing. I ground every morning. So I believe in that. I believe in getting back to God, and I believe in connecting with the energy and all of it.
100%. I actually do. So I work out first and then I take off, my socks and shoes and literally go sit in grass. And that's where I meditate, lay up under my tree, my favorite tree. But the reason I'll tell you guys I know this works is because when I don't do it, after doing it consistently for so long, the days you don't do it, I feel off. I feel like I don't, there's a lot, certain aspects of me that are activated when I do that shut down. And I think that it is because what we see happening with nature, and I bring up coherence all the time because there's an intelligence that makes everything work so perfectly within nature, and it's weaved into all of it. And we're a part of that coherence, right? We're a part of all of it. And so when you think about like the little, I don't know, things that work in their own silos, but without it, it would mess up the whole. We're a part of that. And so, with that being said, that connection, although we may not see it or we can't measure it in our traditional ways, I think that it's definitely felt. So, you should try it. Try grounding and, staying kind of connected because I think it'll be very easy to lose yourself in this digital world. It's like going from 3D to 2D, which is so backwards, you know? And so that keeps, it just keeps you connected.
And let me tell you,
All
Mace
right.
can hear
Yeah.
everything the world is doing.
Oh my God. Okay, Mr. Professional Pillow Fluffer. Go ahead, Jet Life, jump in.
Yeah,
Mr. I
thank
don't
you.
fluff.
Thanks, guys. Mike, thanks for hosting this. I appreciate it. I'd like to get some time with you actually to maybe go more in depth about my story, but I don't really have a question, but I did want to sort of use this platform to share my voice about something that happened to me, and it's directly related to MK Ultra. Back in December of last year, for about 2 weeks I was attacked with like electromagnetic weapons, and every night I was waking up in my sleep with all sorts of crazy stuff happening. And after about 2 weeks, these guys finally revealed themselves to me, and they were using V2K. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but V2K is voice to skull, and it's basically where they use radio frequencies where they can like essentially put voices in your head. And these two men like literally tried to make me a shooter. They wanted me to like shoot at people on Christmas Day, and they came after me. They I couldn't like I tried to get away from my car. I tried to call people, my phone wouldn't work. Like they shut that down. Like messages I sent on text, every phone call I made, I called 911. I did everything I could think of, and nothing would get out. um, the technology and capabilities that they have is beyond your belief. And I don't know, if you guys have any experience or know anyone who is aware of that. But if you watch, there's a few 60 Minutes episodes about something called Havana syndrome. So if you guys are familiar with Havana syndrome, it's also about people being attacked with electromagnetic weapons. And if you watch those episodes, you'll have sort of an understanding of what I'm talking about right now.
But Jet Life, so just so you know, we did briefly hit on this, and that is going to be a topic that we kind of unpack in a bit. But because we only have a limited amount of time with Mike, we wanted to keep the questions specifically around the amazing documentary that he made and that we watched in the watch party. So, have you seen Out of Shadows? And if you have any questions for him about that, then I can give you well, I'll give you the mic back.
Yeah, no,
But go ahead.
I have seen it, and I think it's a great documentary, and the work is awesome. You guys are great. Yeah, no, I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to put that out there because I think more people need to understand this type of stuff that's going on. And Mike, if I could touch base with you sometime, I'd really like to go more in depth about my story, about what happened to me. It would be great. So thank you guys.
I just followed you, dude.
Cool. Okay. And just so you know, Jet Life, I do plan on talking more about that, whether we get to it tonight or maybe an upcoming space, kind of, unpacking what voice to skull is, and then I'll invite
Well,
you
and
to that so that you can.
Jet, we talked about that like in the beginning of this space with Brian. So follow Maze, and she'll get over it.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jet Life. Okay, let me see. For some reason, my screen's not showing hands.
Can I go,
Does
mate?
anybody?
To your point? Yeah, I had a hand up.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, to your point and to Alpha's point, this positive thinking thing. I've been in a few spaces with a guy called Science Bob McGuire, who's an ex-CIA operative, a real one. And we talked about this collective consciousness and influencing the collective consciousness. And I've studied this stuff. I don't totally understand it. I totally believe that it's being implemented in society as we speak. And I said to Bob, who is a real guy, you can look him up, Science Bob McGuire. I said, Bob, does the government believe in influencing the collective consciousness by either subliminal or overt means? He said, oh yeah, for sure. And without even questioning him, Maze, or anyone, without even questioning him further, he came back with, and not only do they believe in it, they have several active programs working on trying to influence it in certain ways. So I just wonder what you thought of that. Michael or Maze or Alpha?
Mike. Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't know if he heard. Did you hear his question, Kent? I mean, did you hear Kent's question, Mike? Sorry.
I did, but I'm still trying. Give me a very specific. What exactly are you asking me? I guess that's
Okay. Well, there's already scientific evidence that negative influence has a genetic influence. So, trauma victims, when they have children, the children are genetically different, and the only causal factor seems to be trauma. So, if that's the case,
Well, that
then
goes into
it's
the Monarch programming. Have you ever looked into Monarch programming?
yeah,
How?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah, they try to link being able to have causal implementation of genetic changes to people to make them think certain ways. The
Well,
point
no,
I'm sort of
it's
trying to
generationally passed down.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's actually to my point. That was sort of what I was getting at. We know that society in general over the last 2 decades has become generally a bit more negative. It's more violent. It's more very, excessively, flagrant in the use of violence and that sort of imagery. It does seem to have had a coercive effect on everybody. That society in general seems to be on a negative trend. Do you think
Well,
that that is part of the collective consciousness, and do you think that is being
well, I think
caused,
it's I
or do
think
you
it's
think
a
it's an after
shaping
effect?
operation. I think this is a perfect example of a shaping operation. I think if if over time they can shape enough people to believe a certain topic is true, or a certain thing is true, or it's okay, or they've desensitized a group of people, a number of people to accept something, then it migrates and it grows. And I think that's what you're kind of referring to. I think um you they
Yeah,
can
well, yeah, just to
put.
let you know, I've posted on it. I've said that people be aware what's happening in. I don't want to mention the place. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. What's happening in that Middle Eastern country right now is being commentated on.
I'll
But
say it, Palestine.
yeah, well, okay, I'll say it then, Maze. What's happening in Palestine? We're passively, we, not us, we as in society in general, is commentating on it, but we're not stopping it. And I've posted about this. I've
Well,
said
I honestly, when
what we're
that
seeing
whole.
today. If I could finish,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is we're allowing that to happen in our society today. That degradation of human rights, because it's someone else, but tomorrow it's going to be us because we're allowing it. It's going to one day. It's going to be us.
Go ahead.
Well, I just think it's a very complex situation. I think there's so many people manipulating so many narratives at this moment that it's really hard to get to the facts of all of
Yeah,
it. I
but
mean,
Michael, just the basic humanity of it, mate. Come on.
oh
We
no,
can't
I
look at
agree.
what's
You're
happening there
like,
and see it as any way acceptable in society. It's abhorrent.
oh
And we're
no,
allowing it to
I
continue.
agree. I mean, people should not be being murdered anywhere. Okay, period. I mean, I think people. I mean, like, but this war has been going on since the beginning of time. I mean, between good and evil, and it's and however it lines up is literally what we've been fighting for eternity. And I think people are now seeing it, and the veil of deception is starting to be ripped back, and that's where humanity has to make some choices. That's all I'm saying.
So, I will just kind of pop in and say that, when it comes to just the idea that there are switches within our mind, our moral compass, and all of the things that we as, humans can, in a sense, like contribute to the world. All of that right now, what we're witnessing, and what we've talked about, is that it can be controlled and manipulated if you're not conscious of it. And then even how we would be able to protect ourselves, I think, is a bigger question that we should be putting at the forefront of many discussions coming up. I know that one of the things that we did talk about, grounding and all that, and being connected, there's a lot of intelligence within that exchange that maybe perhaps isn't defined, or that I could, measure in ways that we know how to measure. But that is one of the important elements when it comes to being able to, even military wise. Like, I think there's also, the ability for information to kind of flip that switch in, a soldier's mind, to say, yes, go kill those people because this is what they did and this is the threat that they pose. So when we talk about beliefs, beliefs go they extend much farther beyond just the faith and religion. It's just, our ability to believe in these stories, whatever they are, also just opens us up to a lot of manipulation. And so, I think this is just the beginning. And I wanted to, when it comes to like the stuff that you said, Mike, you were like, I couldn't even believe about the pedophilia, because to me, same thing. Like when I first heard that, it was so not even a thing in my mind. Like, what? Why? How the fuck is that even possible? And when I actually faced it, I had to build up courage to actually really go and deep dive
Well,
into it. It sent me into a depression for a while. Like, I spiraled, and it took a while to get back.
I'll be honest
It
with
really
you.
did.
That was like, I waited to put that at the end of the film because it was the hardest thing for me to even begin to uh, come to terms with, because I just couldn't see how anybody could hurt a child, like literally. Like how could anyone bring themselves to hurt a baby, a child, a young person? Like that just doesn't make sense to me as a man. Like it doesn't make sense to me. We're supposed to protect. We're supposed to nurture. We're supposed to honor. We're supposed to bring them up and teach them. And when I was seeing the things or hearing the things I was hearing, it was really hard for me to even begin to question. And that was, I mean, you guys will all come to it on your own, but it's real, and it's sad, and it's not what we as human beings. I believe most human beings are good. I believe the nature of man is legitimately good, and we are not evil, and we are not that way, but we get, manipulated, and we get placed into things that are okay, and we go along with them. So that was really hard for me to come to terms with. And Liz Crokin, I mean, I was hoping Liz was going to jump on the space, but um, I messaged her. But when you go look at the research that girl has done and how far she put herself out doing what she did, I mean, Liz gets beat up all the time because of what she says, and no mainstream media outlets will cover what Liz is saying. But the reality is, I haven't seen Liz be inaccurate on anything she's actually reported. Now, do people want to discredit it, say things about Liz, attack Liz? Of course, because Liz is an easy target. But the reality is, the things that she was pointing out about these networks are very real if you go look into them on just the basis of facts. So, yeah, Alpha, did you have a question?
I just want to also say, if you're not getting attacked, you're probably not doing enough.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just letting
believe
you
me.
know. In this day and age, I think that when the hating level's high, that means your message is spreading. Sorry,
No,
but go ahead,
you're believe me, and when the hate level gets real high, your message doesn't spread. And that's what's happened with Into the Light. Like Brian and I were talking about this offline. I'm like, Brian, this movie is so relevant, like right now, what's going on? He's like, well, they knew you were doing it, and they're doing everything they can to prevent that message from going forward. And I was like, okay, well, I've done everything I can do. I've put it out. I've tried to show people. I've tried to explain it to people.
Well, Mike, should we do a watch party for that too? But I still want to make sure you're getting
You know what?
compensated. But
I'd do a watch party with you guys. I mean, the thing is this, it's never been about money for me. It's just been about, the problem was, it's like once you give up everything and then you want to make films again, you have to have financing. I had financing when I made Out of Shadows because it was me. I was in a different financial position than today. So when I did Into the Light, obviously I had to, pay for everything. And I just, was not in the same position because of what I kind of did with Out of Shadows. So, I know that God,
what I think we can do.
well,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I was just I have an idea. Just out of, because it's a watch party, it doesn't mean that we can't put some sort of, like donation for people to show you support out of gratitude. Because in those cases, I think a lot of people that will see the work that you did and all of the sacrifices that you made in that moment, not only are they drawn to watch it, but inclined perhaps to maybe kind of donate to, since it's not, they don't have to pay for the movie, but they can just pay $10 donation or 20 or however much they want to give or they can
Well,
give. That
let's.
way,
I would totally.
yeah.
I'm totally down for that. Let's talk about this offline, and we'll figure it out. Maybe do a party. Look. Here's my thing. I'm going to an event this weekend. We're going to show Into the Light to over 300 pastors. We're going to get this movie out to the churches and to the people, and I'm going to make the commitment from here until the end of the year. I will go to any church, any size. I don't care how small, how big, and I will spread this message. And I will answer questions, show the movie. I'll be present. Just, they pay to get me there. They pay to show the movie. I'm all down for it. Like I'm all in. I'm all in on trying to spread this message and just wake people up, because until people understand how much they've been manipulated and why they've been manipulated and who's actually manipulating them, they're not going to understand how to fight back, because it goes back to like Sun Tzu's Art of War. You got to know your enemy. If you don't know your enemy, you're never going to defeat your enemy, only 50% of the time. So you got to know what you're fighting. You got to know what you're up against. And once you realize that, you're going to make the right decisions. And that's the power of the people. And that's what we're, trying to ultimately fight to get to.
Absolutely, which is also reminds me of another thing that we'll explore in terms of combating it back is frequency. Yes, frequency, which is the same thing that is being used against us. We can use that not only to protect us, some sort of they create Faraday cages for you as well, but they also, are, very healing. There's so much there. But Alpha, go ahead, love. And then we're gonna go to Michael, and then after Michael, we'll probably close out. But just giving you guys a heads up. Go ahead, Alpha.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention, and I mean, there a couple you kind of touched on it a few times here towards the end, and it just kind of spawned a thought in my mind just to remind everybody that I mean everything from religion to politics to spirituality to science, like everything that we use to even form the opinions and convictions we have today, like our strongest opinions and our strongest convictions have still either been created by, influenced by, attacked by, or had to in some way fend off propaganda. So, I mean, just try to fathom like how much that affects the clarity of what is even truth. And, how do you undo that? And I think that's, just to go back to a point earlier, is I think there's an internal compass in us that really points us in the direction of, what's right, what's wrong, or what's good or what's evil. And people need to tap into that. I mean, there's some fundamental things that we all just know is wrong. Like if you harm a
I
child, like,
can I
yeah,
just say
no,
this?
jump in on that, Mike.
Fundamentally, hurting a child or mutilating a child or doing anything to a child is wrong. I don't give a shit what side of the aisle you line up on, what religion you worship. If you are down with hurting children, you're evil. I mean, in my book, children are literally our future, and we as stewards, as men and women of this republic or this world, it's our duty to fucking protect them and to stand up when people are doing evil shit to them. So I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be religious and godly, but the end of the day is if you can hurt a child, you're evil. I'm sorry, I hate that. I believe we are 100% here to protect our little ones, and that's
Um,
what I'm here for.
I'm there with you, Mike, and trust me, even Jesus even flipped tables, bro. So he knows what it's like when we're passionate about things. And like I said, like there's this fundamental internal compass that just lets us know what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's evil. Like you said, like somebody hurting a child, that just like your humanity. It doesn't matter what that child looks like in color. Doesn't matter what religion that child comes from. Like we would all have issue with that. So let those things start to be the new foundation of what truth starts to look like for you. What are the things that your just internal compass tells you that shit is wrong, and start building off that. Take authority away from everything that you've ever relied on to tell you what is the truth, because everything that we see has been weaponized. Everything. And there's going to be a great debate that takes place tomorrow, or I destroy Q for Patriot and those guys. But one really great thing that Q does say is that when the majority of people learn the truth, they're just not going to be able to handle that. And I think one of the reasons they're not going to be able to handle that is because people have given the authority of what their beliefs are going to be based on to something or someone else. And I think it's high time that we take back that authority to say, this is making me feel a certain way. Mace played a video a few days ago from the army that literally talks about propaganda and the intentions of what it's supposed to do. Well, as Americans specifically, we're 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 vulnerable to that just as much. And so just think about that as you get pissed off or angry about something, how much of it's true and how much of it's been weaponized. And hopefully you guys think about that over the next few days, few months, etc.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Now that you brought up the debate, thank you for the reminder. I'm gonna go ahead and promo it real quick. Now I'll pass it over to Michael. And this debate is every Sunday, guys, and there's just a variety of different topics. There's topics about God, religion, the Trump being Antichrist. That's one of the upcoming ones, or not. AI. We have so much lined up. But tomorrow. And it's in the nest. Go ahead and RSVP. It's about Q. And it's so funny because in hindsight, I was sitting here thinking, like, are the people who are like countering Q
Can I?
like undercover Q? They're undercover Q, right? Because you wouldn't, that's what Qs would do. They would go undercover and they would be the counter of the whole Q argument because they wouldn't waste. No one would waste that much time to even understand what the hell it is to only counter it, right? I just think it's funny.
Why
We'll
is
see what
Alpha
happens though. We got
laughing?
a whole I don't know. I don't know why I was laughing. But listen, I got a lot of people lined up for this. Michael's going to be a part of this too. Hadar's friends, they confirmed. And then Alpha has some, I guess, are there professional Q people? I call them professional Q people coming. And we're going to battle it out. I'm going to be a question asker. And yeah, it's going to be fun. But RSVP, it's in the nest. What were you, what were you about to say? Alpha, or somebody just
I,
chimed in a
I,
second
I
ago.
I
I don't
just
know.
want to
But
say one thing about the Q thing, okay? So I followed it all from the beginning, okay? But here's what I'm going to say, and this is all my takeaway of this is the only thing I give a shit about Q is this. Whatever it was, whatever it is, what it did was it made people ask questions and it made people research. So I don't give a shit about clocks or deltas or all the things that everybody's trying to like put together. It doesn't matter. What it did was it was making people ask questions to the narrative. It was making people research information. So, in my opinion, it was a success. So, why would they? Why would Q be something bad if it wasn't? I mean, of course it could get usurped. Of course it could get hijacked. Of course it could go different ways, and they could put whatever they want to put in it. But the thing that I took away from it was until that came along, people were not asking questions. And what I liked about it personally was the fact that it made individuals have their own thought and have their own ability to go research things. And to me, that was all that really mattered from that whole operation, the PSYOP, whatever you want to call it. That was what was important. My takeaway, period.
Well, let me just say this. I think,
Absolutely, Mike. And this is all I'll
okay,
add. Look
Mr.
at 8 seconds.
You're too
This is all
froggy to
I'm
be
gonna
the
say
counter
is,
Q person, but go
listen,
ahead.
as a population, as humanity, we were all drowning in the ocean, and Q came along and gave us floaties and life vests to figure some things out and keep our chins above water. But now it's time for evolution. And instead of being afraid of drowning, it's time to make sure that people understand now it's time to dive deep into that ocean that you thought was
I
drowning you.
think Q was what I would call an awakening operation. And now you're in the exposure phase. And you're,
Okay, but
yeah,
can I?
go ahead, Mace.
Oh, well, I just want to remind you guys that I think that's absolutely like if we can look at the services it rendered in the awakening process for many, and acknowledge that for what it is, and you value that for what it is. However, I do know, and this is something that's I'm 1000% sure of, and we can see it in our current events today, is that things that people are capable of believing in, and building this very strong allegiance to where sometimes it could be blinding, and that's when it gets exploited. And that is what I want people to be conscious of in this day and age, is that the exploitation potential is major. And so whatever it was, I think it can be valued and appreciated, but just keeping that in mind is
No,
important.
but that's where discernment and revelation, because you can't have revelation without knowledge. And you have to have the knowledge before you can have revelation. So when you first, you have to be able to consider something, to be able to think about something differently. So to me, I'm not sitting here saying I believe in everything that it was, but what I believe that it did, the process of it, was it made people question and research. And to me, that's not a bad thing.
Oh, that's an excellent thing. That's the good services that it rendered that I think is great. And I personally have no opinion on it because I'm excited to learn tomorrow. My object that's why I'm asking questions. What you put the thumbs down for, Alpha? I ask questions, and I'm just, my position on any belief. It doesn't matter, like, what it is, but I think that people who have a extremely strong belief in something, just to be conscious of it not being used, not to say whether even if it's true or not, but whatever it is, it's a cluster of people that are hooked into it. And so it could be true, it could be false, it could be whatever, but that can be exploited because it's a cluster, and it makes it easier to exploit and to get people to act and behave in certain ways. So I'm just saying that specifically around Q in times like this, especially coming up into elections, all the shit that's been going on, on the screen. I think that right now is the best time more than ever just to be very, very conscious about it. And that's why it is an important timing for the topic as well. And
And
I'm so
Patriot's
like
really
honored to
quiet, so
have the
I think he
people
must be
that
nervous. Patriot must be nervous. He's
he's a
never that
pumpkin right
quiet.
now.
Probably
He's definitely a
sleeping.
pumpkin, sleeping for
Don't
sure.
give your bag away,
So
Alpha, though.
yeah.
Don't give your bag away.
Listen,
Well,
MD.
listen,
It's okay to believe in Santa Claus because it's great. It means well, but there comes a point in your life where you have to stop believing in Santa Claus because you got to become Santa Claus, or your kids don't get no presents.
Could I just
That's funny.
well, well, what I would say is, look, I go back to my previous statement. It's Q was, to me, it was it was it was an operation to get people to research and question narratives, and people were able to do that on their own or they weren't. And that was the dissemination process that it put people through. But look where we are now. It's been what, 6 years, maybe 5 years, and now people are able to step back, look at it, people can say it wasn't real, it wasn't whatever, but the result of it was it got a large number of people to research and discern information that were normally not awake. And that's, to me, uh, a very positive thing. So I'll land it there. I'll take a couple more questions, and then I'm going to get out of here because I got to go to bed. I got an event tomorrow I got to head to, and I got to get up early. And so, is there anything else you guys
Well,
want to talk about?
yeah. Michael is going to actually be the last person. I'm going to him, and then we were going to shut it down just to make sure that, people have like they don't have an overwhelmingly long space to listen to if they do watch the video and then want to listen to this, because that's been the case with all the other watch parties. So Michael, over to you. Jump in, and then we will close
All
out.
right. Yeah, no, I'll just keep it real brief. I mean, I think this has been an awesome space. I think, all that you've done, Mike, has been, everything that we should all aspire to continue to strive for. And I know that, it's hard and difficult to believe these things, but I think once it's observable and once you're able to understand that it is real and the genie's out of the bottle, it's like you take that and then you make the best of it from there. So I think, it does seem a little scary, obviously, but, again, it's like you're always bringing up Maze, and like Alpha's always talking about, and Mike as well. If you're able to observe it and then you can understand that it is tangible and real, then it's like, okay, so what do we do from here? So for me, obviously, I think being solutions oriented in the future, and moving forward is going to be extremely important. And the Q space tomorrow will be exciting. But as far as any questions for you, Mike, I think more people should definitely purchase Into the Light, because that movie, just as much as Out of Shadows is important, that movie is even more important, because once you understand that the sovereignty of your mind and how important data is, and we don't even have control over like who is controlling the data, or if I can weaponize these frequencies to cause someone to do harm, is that a weapon, right? And so that's not regulated, it's not controlled. So how much do we want that genie out of the bottle? And do we want to have oversight? If we don't start thinking about these things, then I think they'll eventually just put us into a mental pretzel, where we're not even in control of our own thoughts and feelings. But yeah, I would just say I can't thank you enough, Mike and Amazing Alpha, for doing the space. It's been a thrill. It's been awesome, and I do think better days are ahead, and I think it's good that we're all here collectively together, waking up, going through this process. It can seem extremely painful, but I think it's all happening for a reason. So thank you guys for the space.
And Mike, thank you for all the research and all the things that you bring, and Alpha and Maze and all you guys. I mean, like, this right here is why we are winning. We are not fighting from a position of loss. We're fighting from a position of victory, because we're having these conversations. We're able to have these conversations. And people need to understand that it takes these type of conversations to make headway. And I just I mean, I highly admire. I love listening to your spaces. A lot of times I'll come in anonymously and listen to Mike or listen to Alpha and listen to you, Maze. I listen to all you guys. Um, because I don't always have time to like interact, but I want to hear what you guys are doing, and I just love what you guys are doing. So, Mike, with the Ericsson stuff, I mean, there's some things behind the scenes I'd love to tell you what we're doing and get your input, and maybe I'll reach out. We exchanged numbers today. Um, so,
Of
reach
course,
out to
man.
me, man. But
Yeah, of course.
thank you guys for everything. Thank you for actually, re-showing into Out of Shadows. I haven't watched it. I honestly, I watched it with you guys on the watch party, and I hadn't watched it in probably a year. And I was like, wow, this is still relevant, all of it. And in Into the Light is even more relevant. So just thank you. I appreciate you honoring the work I did. I give it back to God, and I just give thanks to all you guys. So thank you.
Well, thank you for catalyzing millions of people. And probably it's going to be so much more. I look forward to airing your second one, which is Out of the Shadows into the Light. Look at how clever that is. I love it. And you know, I will work out all the details in the background, but it is, I think, the responsibility of people like me and everyone in this space to share it, right? Share the information, share the documentary, have people watch it, because this is something that is a great, when I say introductory level, it's like he's talking about his life as a normal human who's doing his thing, he's living his best life. Next thing you know, an injury kind of sparked and catalyzed him into this, it was a sequence of events that like took him down this path, and he explains it so well that anyone who, you know, would normally think like, oh, okay, you're out there to even think these things, can follow this sequence of events and like a normal, you know, um, I guess informational documentary, and then be exposed to the truth of what's really happening. That's so important. The manipulation, our perception of reality. There's nothing more important than having agency in that right now in these times. So thank you again so much, Mike, for your documentary. Thank you all for coming and participating. And I will keep you posted on when we have the next one. And if there's any final comments from my co-hosts, or you know, the secondary co-hosts who you know who you are, please by all means jump in, and otherwise we will close. All right, so we'll go ahead and close. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you,
It was an
guys.
honor to
Thank you,
air that.
Maze.
Good
Love
night,
you
guys.
guys. All right. Have a great night. Bye bye.
Bye. Good